It says we're live. Are we actually live? Tell us we're live. Go with live comments. Why am I over here? Why is so? I'm normally down there. What have you done? Why have you stolen my space?
Well, you know, it's
What the
I
hell?
just like transported in, right? So this is what I've
Who's
done.
this guy? Do I have to get a phaser to get? Where's Stuart? Wait, am I Stuart now? Am I Canadian? Have I evolved?
I think you've been promoted to captain. I think that's what's happened.
Yeah. Boy, if I'm Stuart, I've changed accent and you've lost a lot of hair as Samuel. Well,
It's
it's
like, yeah,
redistributed.
no longer the governor. You know, that's what you are. You're not the colonel.
Dear me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a different kind of live, but also not really. We've done many a live in the last. How many years? But how many years have you been watching us? Because that must put into perspective how long we've been doing this.
Uh, it's got to
God.
be about 3 or 4 years. Yeah, something like that. So, you know, not a short time.
Now, what's your name for those that? Because yesterday I was like, is that guy that you all know? What's your name?
Yeah.
And if you know his name from his name, say in the chat.
Yeah. I'm Oliver Lavery-Farag, and, you know, I'm just trying to put together a fan film at the moment. So Sam has kindly invited me on the show. So thank you very much, Sam. And I'm sure Stuart will be along in a bit. But yeah, great to be on the show, I
The
suppose.
other end of the camera. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's I feel a little exposed. I'm not gonna lie. I've
Yes,
got
that does happen. It's
yeah,
you're now
I've
unmasked,
got the chat.
and in space apparently. It's crazy.
I am, yeah. I'm just, you know, apparently the microphones are really good in the 24th century. So if you hear a car going by, that's just really good microphones.
Space car.
Yeah.
They're always space. Everything's everywhere. Oh madness! He's been here since episode 4 on Delta Flyer. Yeah, I remember picking that. I was like, Stuart, we love the Delta Flyer. I love it more than you. Let's do it. Let's cover it. It'll be great. And I got a model. It's still a good model. And I was like, I'll do animations and I'll. It's funny how time works because that's over 10 years ago, and I remember I remember the choice I made.
Yeah.
10 years is hard to comprehend though, as an actual space of time. But I remember that is kind of worrying. Doesn't feel that long.
It's getting 10 years is getting shorter and shorter and shorter as I get older. I don't like that. This is not a good feeling. I'd like it to feel like a really long period of time.
Well, I was saying it feels
Yeah.
like it was March last week. It is not anymore,
Mhm.
which is weird. And I kept thinking, what have I done this year? And I have done a lot, but because very little was like the plan.
Mhm.
It's like, what have I done? Well, lots, but what have I done? Yeah,
It's
dear me, many things. But yes,
yeah, I mean, the year's going for me as well. Like I mentioned to you
thanks, Stuart.
when we saw
Is that
when we
better?
saw each other at the Comic-Con, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I was going to San Diego, and for
Yeah,
me, it's always been like ages away, and now it's
yeah.
creeping up slowly, and I'm just like, I'm planning my flights. So no, I planned my flights, but I haven't planned the insurance for my
He is
flights. So
real.
that's
I promise.
yes. Ah, there we go.
Yeah,
There's a
I feel now
finger missing from
underdressed.
that Vulcan salute.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what face I'm doing, but yeah, I'm so glad
Yeah.
I found I like blue, as in it suits me, because most people don't do blue. What would your
No, yeah.
uniform color be if you were vibing one? Do you think?
I I think the red suits me. I know it's ever going to be everybody's thing. I want to be in command
Not
red.
Mark's. He's here as well.
Yeah. Um,
Hi,
but
Raj.
so yeah, like yeah, I tend to go for the red. I think makes me feel more confident. I do what they did in the lower decks. I just give inspirational monologues everywhere I go and don't solve any problems whatsoever. So that's
That
what I
was
do.
I watched that the other day for reference for the set. In fact, for Mark's thing, and it's like you forget some of the small jokes in low decks because there are so many,
Mm.
and so many that were very good. I imagine if you would like to do a super cut of the deepest, most clever references low decks, it you know if you the best, it would be like incredible. Speaking of incredible, though, your green screen skills are amazing. I mean, I'm jealous of your skills. Because
Yeah,
this is
this is a TV. Yeah, and unfortunately, um, I'm not very good with the green screen, and I really wanted like this out of focus look, and so I just turned around and just shot it on a shallow depth of field. The illusion, as Sam has seen, breaks apart when I step away from the camera. But for this one shot, it works really well. So yeah.
And for the little box that you now inhabit,
Little
the
box,
Trekyards
yeah.
box.
Literally, the TV ends like here and it ends here.
And of course, you're in a box within a box. But yes, we have,
Yeah.
as we said, so this is a discussion live with Oliver, who's a long-term member of the channel. You've heard his name. Regularly is the wrong word, but regularly, right? As in the chat, super chatting and commenting and being part of our lovely community. And he is now moving into the veil of creating his own Star Trek, which I can sympathize with. And he is currently fundraising, which is important because we want to try and help some of our own in this regard. So we're going to look at the campaign, look at the project, probably get some exclusives because that's what we like to do, and get you guys excited. Hopefully, and I will put the chat up at the campaign right in the chat right now. Hopefully by the end of this live, a couple of you will pledge a couple of bucks or pounds. Is it in pounds or dollars?
It's in pounds, yes.
Okay, a couple of pounds to his cause because I've heard some things and they're fun and exciting. So if you can, I mean, if all 23 of you put in £5, pounds, whatever, it would be great. But we have 2 super chats as well, and do vote in the poll. Do you have the live currently open?
I do. This is the reason I keep looking towards the side. I'm just going to glance.
Because I like other people reading the super chats because I speak less good English than English people.
Oh, I see. Oh, God.
Also, I need to start sharing. So if you want to read the super chats, as I always make Marie do as well. So how we do that is we read the name, read the number, we say thank you, and I mean, sorry, you've been here for years, but read the name, read the number, say thank you, and then read out the chat, if you would, while I share on the social medias.
Yes. Okay. Mark Lawrence for $10 US dollars. And thank you, Mark. I just wanted to see some more ships that follow the design language of their eras and see that all eras get fleshed out more. I love time travel shenanigans. Would be great. It would be a great way to see more. Thanks, Mark. I agree with you in a lot of that, actually, to be perfectly honest. One of the reasons I did the fan film set in the 24th century or the late 24th century was because I thought it was underused. We only saw like 4 movies and the end of DS9. So, classic for real for $2 is Stuart busy being prisoner 48 for the next film. He's being indicted as we speak, to be perfectly honest with you. So we'll find out what happens.
He's in that shady Discovery season 1 court at the start, just 3 blank faces. It's like, that is so Star Trek. Thanks, Discovery. Great. No, he is doing housework, as in his house is being worked on. It's quite seriously. Right. So therefore, he should be here at some point. But there are things happening, and we don't really want. While we love lives, there might be workmen walking through. So
right, gotcha.
I
forget because it's late for us, but it's not for him, right?
Yeah.
It's like 3. Is it something like that?
No, it's 4. Well, 4 off, but yeah.
4. Okay, cool.
Yeah, 4 to 6, 9 to 10, and then LA it's therefore 3 to 5. No.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah, and I have a poll as well, which is: do you watch Star Trek fan films? Yes. Nope, a few but not many. And we have 100% yes of some form at the moment, which is actually kind of wonderful. So super chat thoughts, comments, questions as well. So yeah, let's get into the background then. 3 years of Trekyards. Does your interest in fan films go before that? I'm not saying we're inspired or anything, but like, how far back does the idea of making something go?
I'd seen it. I suppose it goes way back to. So yes, because you were saying I was sure how long you've been doing them. You've been doing them since before Prelude to Axanar, right? You know, that
long time before.
I think that was my big foray into fan films, thinking that they could actually look really, really good, right? You know, and so and I'd followed your stuff as well. And I like the way that you've kind of framed them in the memory alpha kind of space. They're these kind of pieces to camera. It's clever use of budget. Of course, when I'm on a live, I get a coughing attack. But yeah. So no, I really like the way you've done that and the way you've fleshed it out. Yours, I think, are the most accurate fan films that I think I've seen. Yeah, definitely yours. Yeah, yours.
Oh, thanks. I've not heard it said that before. It's quite nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you put a lot of effort into making them really accurate and stuff like that. And even mine are kind of like trying to put a little bit of a spin on it. But I'm still trying to stay as faithful to Trek as possible, because otherwise Why do a fan film? Why not do an original sci-fi at that point?
Yeah, it's funny. Obviously, I know most creators and most Americans are so hardcore TOS slanted that they almost can't think of doing non-TOS, which for me, having done every era, I mean, I think I've said I've announced it publicly. My next fan film is a Wrath of Khan film, so that will hit that era that I've not hit before. And I've known everybody. Most of the Americans teams have a guy or two guys who want to recreate TOS. Cool. Then you've got the little bit of spin or just a faithful recreation. For the most part, the Europeans, we all want to do post TNG or TNG post TNG. It's amazing. Like literally, the split is the ocean. But how each one approaches it is so different. You know, the one-to-one recreation, the as I say, your own spin, the take the most obscure ship but flesh it out, or the most famous ship and do something small. It's interesting how each person. I had a team that approached me last year, which I did not work with for various reasons, and they were picking and choosing things. And as the conversation went on, I got less and less inclined to be involved. They were saying, you know, we want to be sort of 10 years post Nemesis, but use Picasso in 3 uniforms because they look nice. But there's a 15-year mismatch, and then when you start doing that, that's why, you know, Stranger Worlds is so frustrating, because the stuff doesn't make sense. Therefore, you can't judge it compared to everything, so you can't guess. Like, you can't go beyond what you see in that moment, because is it bigger than a Excelsior? Does the scenes work? I don't know, right? They've broken the boundary. So when you start doing your own thing, you lose a bit of that conformity of the universe. But in my films, if you throw Enterprise D in, you know exactly what it can do. If you throw the right combos on a uniform, you now know this era. You know, it's all kind of, I try and use the structure. Yes. Almost my limitation. Like I remember I had sorry, I'm talking a lot here. I had a film where I got really pissed off because runabouts are only warp 6, and I thought there were more at that point. So I had to go from like 5 light years away to 0.9. I was like,
oh right, God, right, yeah.
Because they're not that fast and if round day. But I'm gonna be panicky about that because I want it to make sense. You know, I like that limitation.
No, I completely agree with you on this. I think it just takes you out of the story, and it takes you out of enjoying the piece, right? I think when you say, oh, I don't think that's quite true, or, you know, I think that might be a thing or something like that. It just stops you enjoying the things you're trying to get to. But also, like, it's the challenge of also like wrestling all of those things together. We know that this has to be in this time period. This has to be in this other time period. This is in this other time period, so it's not quite right. So how do I make that work within the story that I've got? Because I had a completely other idea, and then I was talking to some friends, and then they told me I was wrong. And, you know, like, that's kind of how that works, right? So it's just, yeah, I may have a friend in the chat. I'm not gonna lie to you right now with the next super chat.
Read it out. Embarrass them if you want to,
okay.
or not.
Yeah. So, Geet. I don't know, because I always pronounce her name wrong on purpose. So Seven Nathan for £10 says, I'll donate if you get Ollie to say that there are 5 lights. I've never said that there are 5 lights. There are always 4 lights.
And there's no evidence on screen that you've said there are 5 lights. Nope, not a single thing.
Absolutely.
Nope.
So we were actually in the DST that was the one year they did it in London at the Excel Centre. There was this great moment where we were sitting in the back. Actually, Geet was there for this, and basically Kate was on the stage at the end, but they hadn't turned the lights off, right? So when she was saying, there were these 4 lights, and so there were 8 lights on stage, and so we were just giggling at the back of the room, saying, "There are 8 lights. No, there are 9 lights," and we thought this was the funniest thing in the world. Everybody else was trying to listen to Kate, but you know, that's kind of the type of person people we are. We're terrible people.
And there's a few,
but you should love us anyway.
There's a few certainly overdone jokes, which are jokes, like it's a fake. It's a meme joke beyond just a joke. So just to whet the appetites, guys, I am now playing the teaser film, which of course, if you want to go watch it, it is on the YouTube and Indiegogo right now.
Commencing deposition with former Admiral Fraser Reynolds on Stardate 6125.8.2 with Lieutenant Commander Liam Wallace interview. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, Mr. Reynolds.
For this, but yeah, everyone, if you want to get Indiegogo,
I'd like to be on with your escape attempt.
5, 10, whatever.
Okay. I wouldn't describe it like that.
And you know,
and how would you describe it?
The more he gets, the more we can do, and push into other films. Who knows? Oh yeah, so
Well, I activated the
yeah,
emergency
I've
distress
done
signal before the shuttle crashed, so
do a fan
it looks
film
like I
where
wanted you to find me.
You use zero canon,
Okay.
as in
Right.
actively make nothing make sense. or
Obviously,
like
to
how
be
Discovery
rescued.
Season 1 was, where none of the rules apply.
And frankly,
because
it
it's
is
kind of
time
like
for all
Star Trek.
this to
So,
be
for
over.
example, you're
You
in
were
the
nowhere
TOS
near
era,
the shuttle when
and
you
you've got a
found it.
Defiant class with an O-berth bridge, and they're using
Who could possibly be of interest in that
tricorders,
place?
and they're
There's
telling you
life,
they're gonna transwarp,
no
and
civilization.
they're going to transwarp factor 19,
It's
and
empty.
he's a commandant. Like every single thing.
I can honestly
is
tell
wrong.
you, there's nothing
And
there.
then suddenly a Bajoran warship drops out of slipstream and fires quantum phase
Is that because
cannons.
you were
Like,
playing
everything
chess
is
while the rest of us
totally
are playing
strange,
checkers?
right? And show how when there's no canon being like when
It's
canon's
funny, most
broken,
people think of enhanced
can't
individuals
understand
as
the scenario
masters
because
of their
nothing-
own
there's no-
fate and
"Oh, wow, of
destiny.
course
A
my
being
transatlantic
Pierre
defiance
Simon
control
Laplace
craft
would
can
be
fire
proud
2
of.
baby nukes against
There's something so small
but to show how you need the canon
can
to
grow
structure
into
it,
tiny
and
dots
like
and
how
create
nonsense
material
is Incredible
change,
still being played straight.
spoiling it for
They're
further
voice of people,
use.
but that's Discovery Season 1, right? Just things they just did because,
You might get people enjoying it. Once they get it, once they get the joke.
However, in
they'll,
most
like, they'll find
instances,
it
you
real
are
fun.
just trying to survive.
What do you think? Would you watch that? Would you be engaged?
Because when you leave
I
paradise,
would
it's
do.
not because you
I'd be the one
choose
pitching
to.
activate the photonic cannon with some holographic.
Grenade came for me.
Because that's
Quantum
canon. It's got to be
Not
different.
even my rank would
It's
protect me.
different.
Yeah, transphonic.
And I witnessed a fair few people die
Yeah,
because of
but
it.
yeah, I guarantee though, you get a lot of comments saying,
Some who
even
supported
though
me, some who
everything's
did
wrong,
not.
that's not the right ship for the era.
But it cost me.
Singular things they caught, and everything else they
Every
got
time.
above their head.
Yeah,
But it's
it'd
like-
be like. Well, I mean, I actually saw a post that
The
kind
plan
of
was
did this
always to
thing,
go on,
everything was
though.
supposed to be from the wrong era.
Mm.
And the thing that bugged me the most was the con badge, was the TNG con badge, and I was like,
Perhaps
is it
I've
wrong that
left
this
it
is the
too
thing
long.
that I find the most egregious in the post?
And that's the irony, because those that understand
Maybe I'm not as good as I think I
going to
am.
see the thing.
Maybe
They might have
it's
not
time to
had
face failure the way
comment.
one would face success.
Had the reverse side of
And
that
how's
for
that?
years now. It's frustrating. You put in 200 hours
With
and
dignity.
one somebody from Idaho, despite all the hours, just says, actually, and not comment on the film. Just one thing. It's like,
One thing.
there is kind of review the film as well, because that's
Mm-hmm.
a pointless comment. Which is ironic, because when they don't notice things, I feel very happy. Have you seen Temporal Anomaly, my first Trek film?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Long time production, various reasons, etc., etc. And that was funny because Dad had a screen use Voyager, which fit him and the actor who played Captain Moreau, which is great. So screen use canon, brilliant. But it was really red into the captain, and I thought 2000, gosh, 2013. I thought it's okay. I can color shift in After Effects, which you can do in theory.
Commencing deposition with
And I'll do
former
that for the
Admiral
entire
Fraser
film.
Reynolds
It'll be
on
fine.
Stardate
It'll be
61258.2
fine.
with
the
Lieutenant
2000,
Commander Liam Wallace interview.
upgrade that PC.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me,
Not
Mr.
bad.
Reynolds.
But as soon
I'd
as
like
I
to be on
started
your
doing
escape
that,
attempt.
you realize this skin and this
Okay.
orange, basically the same
I wouldn't
colour,
describe it
break
like
down
that.
in a film.
And how would you
So I would
describe
have to
it?
then crop around the neckline every single shot. And as soon as it's like this, it's like I'd spent I think a weekend doing like.
Well, I activated
shots.
the emergency
And because
distress
it had to be
signal
certain
before the shuttle
brightness,
crashed,
had to
so
be very good.
it looks
So
like I
about,
wanted you to
I'd say
find
4
me.
days of failed work.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm going to have to accept he is
Why?
now a gold.
Obviously, to be
You know
rescued.
what? Hundreds of comments, a decade almost.
And frankly, it is time for all this to be over.
Less than 5 people have ever
You were nowhere
commented.
near the shuttle.
Why is
when
the
you
captain
found
not in red?
it. Sorry.
Who could possibly be of interest
my
in that
audio's
place?
just cut out.
There's
I'm
life,
trying to fix it.
no
At
civilization.
the same
You
time.
sound
But,
It's empty.
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah, so as I say, so yeah.
I can honestly
Many,
tell
many
you,
years,
there's
hundreds of
nothing
comments,
there.
Under 10, under 5 have ever commented, why is the captain wearing gold, not red?
Is that because you were playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers?
But it should be obvious. But
Yeah.
It's funny, most people
Yeah,
think
it
of
is one of those
enhanced
things,
individuals
yeah,
as
like,
masters
I
of
think
their
there are
own
nuanced
fate and
things where if you just
destiny.
casually
A
watch
being
the show,
Pierre
that
Simon
you're just like,
Laplace
okay, that's
would be
that, that's
proud
that.
of.
But then if you get into the
There's
lore
something
of it,
so
then you kind of
small
go, actually at this date it would not
Can
be
grow
that.
into
And that's
tiny dots
counterintuitive
and
for
create
casual
material
viewers.
change,
But
spoiling it
bravo
for further
on changing the
use.
colour in post. I mean, that was definitely The thing it's hard to do now, with the bit rates that we've got.
However, in most instances, you are
Sure,
just
sure.
trying
It's
to survive.
That was the point.
Right.
Because
Oh,
when
sorry,
you
that's the
leave
bit I cut out.
paradise, it's
Right,
not
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
because
but
you
the thing is,
choose
work
to.
decided to accept he's going to be gold.
Yeah.
And they came for me.
Later, Sophie who actually noticed because he's a captain. He
Not
says he's a
even
captain.
my rank would
So in
protect me.
theory, you should. Why wouldn't you
And
be
I
able to get
witnessed a
gold
fair
captains
few
if you're a
people
captain
die
engineer?
because of it.
Like,
Yeah.
like
Some who
if,
supported
in the
me, some
TNG
who
era,
did
if
not.
If TOS was TNG and Scotty was captain engineering,
And it cost
Scotty
me
now suddenly put on a red uniform
every time.
and still work in engineering? I don't know. Because right? Like,
The
doesn't
plan
make
was
sense.
always to go
Is
home,
Geordie
though.
now putting on red as soon as he becomes captain of engineering? I think he was a red cop. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they've never done it, but why wouldn't it make sense?
I thought
Perhaps
when you were
I've
talking
left
about
it too
about
long.
red, because they do change from gold to red, right? There is a point for this, until the uniforms could be the same.
Maybe I'm not as good
And
as
they
I
decide
think
to
I
change the
am.
color later on.
Maybe
Something the company
it's time to
does,
face
like
failure the way
decisions.
one
They do
would
all the time.
face success.
So if it's early enough to say that these uniforms were introduced, and then
With
they
dignity.
hadn't transitioned the color, I suppose that's how I would rationalize it if I was thinking.
And people are telling me that the video is too loud,
Oh
which is funny because I don't hear the audio.
no, I don't hear it at all either.
Which is obviously very sorry about that, guys. We don't hear audio on our end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, we don't hear it, okay? No, it wasn't even showing away from
Yeah,
us,
sorry
obviously.
guys. Yeah.
Well, you heard a
How's the
tremendous film
audio
for
now?
two things. Well, we out classics, not super chat.
Right, yes. Classic for real. A member for 27 months at the rank of lieutenant. If you can't hear what Sam is saying over the clip, he's saying the best Star Trek waifu is Princess Daisy from Mario Kart Swimsuit Edition Natch. So yeah, I mean, it's a very good uniform for Daisy in Mario Kart. I did see that the other day. I saw it on the live.
And engraved, who I don't recognize the name of, so hello if you're new. The audio was amazing. It just drowned out the both of you. Yes, we are.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Hey, it shows you've got good audio, and it kills us. So the entire hey, you heard my story about the uniform. They didn't.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. I had to say it twice.
To be fair, my audio cut out in the middle as well. So no, there was a mixed thing that everybody was hearing at that point.
Everyone had a great time. Basically, I'm saying films are hard, and doing the fake canon thing, I think that was part of it as well.
Yeah.
Right, I will try and play it for a third time without
the audio.
Because I never play things with audio, as in with video. So why don't you now, as the director, set up what they're about to see again, and we can talk over it.
Huzzah!
So,
yes. So the proof of concept that I put together is the idea is that the character that you see that Paul plays, he's turning around and recounting the events of what's happened. So the film that I plan to make, what the Indiegogo is for, is actually, you're not going to see giving a piece of the camera, you're going to see the whole events play out. But I thought this was a good way of showing people what it is that they would, what they would get. And this, if you kind of like this, you should like the short that we plan to make, but in a way that kind of feels a bit complete at the same time. So that's kind of the background to it, and it's kind of also to kind of look at kind of like the camera work and the visual effects work, test it for myself, but also kind of see this is kind of the level that hopefully we can create. Should be able to do that, no problem.
which is funny because it's amazing to see how things have come, because my proof of concept was for Temple Anomaly was terrible, but it was like, look the fact that I can do this, not how good it looks, the fact that I was able to use the bridge commander video game and hack the camera to move out of the frame so I could then take screen caps of all the sets, so I could use all the sets, but also poorly lit and low resolution, and put actors on it. So it's more that I could be seen in a colony versus looking good, because my film ability was well beyond the CG ability, because of course, right? And then here you are with a good camera, a good prop, a good actor, a good Sonny, you've hit all the bars. It's like, well, damn, that's quite a successful proof of concept, surely.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty happy.
What more can you do?
it's more the consistency and getting the dialogue and the spaces and not being limited by like this as my shot, right? You know, so kind of like doing all of that stuff. I also think that like, you know, yours was done a long time ago now, and the camera technology has come on so far, you know, even in just the last 2-3 years, right? The dual base ISO that I used a lot of in this instance enabled me to do this. Like I'm even shooting this at 12,800 ISO to get the stars to pop out in the background.
With some denoising? No, you
Uh,
live. Oh,
yeah.
nice.
So yeah.
But
So
obviously,
it is
obviously
a little,
the grain is now less than, you know, less than a partial pixel of partial pixel, right? So it works very well.
The controversial thing about this camera is, yes, it does shoot at 12,800. It's not as super clean as Sony make it out to be, but it's usable grain. I wouldn't say that it's unusable, because even in the sequence in the cave, which might be coming up shortly. I've just been looking at you. Sorry. But that's no denoising on it at all, and it's just raw straight out of camera. And I just thought it gave it a little bit of texture, and I thought, you know, if I were using an old-fashioned camera, I'd probably leave that amount of grain in. So it's insane what you can do nowadays, and what you can actually get out of this technology.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot more with less.
And there's definitely a pleasing grain and a digital grain. There's a sort of a subtlety, and especially more from my experience with the 5D line, which obviously is a few generations ago now, but when you get into the sort of grain where it makes the blacks red,
right?
That's when it's obviously the tech can do that. Would you ever use it? No. But like, and so it's nice that cameras more nowadays can raise the grain, but that part of it, that distinct, just because we can, is being removed a bit. Although it's funny because of the way I shoot, which is very limited. I mean, you're not seeing this up, but it's way smaller than you'd think. The it's something people don't appreciate with green screen. Boy, I can sidetrack for days, can't I? Like, okay, quick fire in the chat and for you. If you're doing a green screen shoot, would you want a high or low amount of depth of field? Would you want the green screen beautifully in focus or out of focus? What's your gut reaction and why?
Deep depth of field.
Okay, including, but that mean you lose the hair then? Like what sort of?
So I meant a deep depth of field isn't everything is in focus.
Okay.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, that's it. So you can key out the detail a lot easier, and then I would say that's probably. I think you might get a problem with the out of focus and the semi-transparency of the pixels with shallow depth of field. Is that when you get to the edge and it starts to blur into the background? That would be my gut reaction.
So yeah, everyone's different. I like a lower depth of field.
Commencing deposition with former Admiral Fraser Reynolds on Stardate 61258.2 with Lieutenant Commander Liam Wallace interview. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, Mr. Reynolds.
But there's some.
I'd like to be on your escape attempt.
All those shades of green
Okay.
Or there might be a scene.
I wouldn't describe it like that.
And how would you describe it?
So actually gaining a more balanced green by having out of focus.
Gotcha.
And given that a green is a green, it's a colour at the end of the day, it's not actually a fabric.
Well, I activated the emergency distress signal before the shuttle crashed, so it looks like I wanted you to find me.
For one camera and
okay.
2.8 on the other camera.
Why? Right.
Which is pretty low.
Obviously, to be rescued.
And despite that, I also have ISO.
And frankly, it is time for all this to be over.
Because
you were nowhere near the shuttle.
Because you want to flatter green, and you can pump more
What
light.
could possibly be of interest in that place? There's life, but no civilization.
Because the light's going to go so far and so close.
It's empty.
There's an absolute limitation.
I can honestly tell you, there's nothing there.
Two areas are getting brighter. Doesn't mean the middle gets brighter in the same way.
Is that because you were playing chess
So
or the rest of
balance
us
the
are
way
playing
light
checkers?
reflects on the green, you have to have that at a certain point. Which then means you can't have.
It's funny, most
all
people
cameras
think of
bright,
enhanced
bright,
individuals
bright,
as
bright.
masters
Now
of
you're
their own
looking
fate
for
and
light.
destiny,
Notably,
a being Pierre
you
Simon
can't have
Laplace
high
would be
grain,
proud of.
low depth of field, just
There's
so
something
cheap
so
to take a look
small
and then denoise in post, despite
can grow
the
into
theory
tiny
the
dots and create material change,
Yeah, it's funny
spoiling
that-
it for further use.
funny that
I
goes
did.
out.
I did a bit of a green screen test when I started thinking about I was going to do a fan film, and my results were not good, which is why I used the TV. But yeah, I had real problems with the shallow depth of field shots, and getting just really the edge of the hair, which is my main gripe with it. It takes me. I think there are sometimes where it looks fine, but I was getting unpredictable results with my shots. With one shot would look okay, another shot wouldn't look so good, and it means I didn't want to use that shot anymore. Um, Even if the performance was good.
And of course, you've picked an actor that has, you know, some wisps.
Yes,
Subtle
Paul looks
wisps.
great on everything. So I was thinking about like doing a genetically modified character, and I was like, who do I know in my life that looks genetically modified? And Paul Costa came up. So luckily, Paul was a fan of Star Trek, so I called him up, and I was just like, we knew each other. We'd been in acting classes together, so I didn't, you don't talk about kind of like anything other than the class, and the scenes you generally tend to do are things like, Chekhov, Pinter, Brecht, stuff like that. And so I called him up and I said, do you like Star Trek? And he was like, oh yeah, yeah. I love Trek, Ollie, it's great. Kirk, Picard, that's my era. And that's where he gets out in the end of TNG. So that was his thing. And I said, that's great. It's fantastic. Pitching the idea of genetically modified. Wrath of Khan was like one of his favorite Trek films. I am the black sheep where I really like First Contact. First Contact is my favorite. But I do like Wrath of Khan.
To who?
So like whenever I say First Contact is my favorite, everybody comes out the woodwork and says it's Wrath of Khan. Right? Like it's one of those things where it's just like that kind of like banter among fans where it's just like, yeah, no, it's Wrath of Khan for me, which is fine. But
well, the thing is, they're both the best in different ways.
They really are. Yeah, they're both great. They are really good. I do love Wrath
because
well.
one has aged like fine wine, but you can feel the limitations. Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was made 2 decades earlier, and then one is far more complicated, doesn't quite have the same character work, but how could it? And it betrays Picard's character a bit, but in a fun, self-contained way. Like it's not as like Wrath of Khan's consistent to everybody. That's one of its charms. First Contact really isn't. Then it does the visual effects, the practical work, like it does everything else at an extreme level that Wrath of Khan couldn't even hope to. Right? I mean, maybe Khan's makeup, but I mean, it's still not like the best thing ever. It's when you get to films like Star Trek 6 that for me, it's like some is A star and some is C minus. Like skip Repenthe, I always skip. It's fine, but it's better in other things. But everything political is fantastic. So it's like amazing dip, back to amazing, which is funny. It's basically just do Wrath of Khan again, as in just the political ship stuff with resets. I'm happy with. Yeah.
I remember I said in the live that it was when you had the guy from who was doing Prodigy, and they were like trying to get season 2, and I was like he said you can tell a lot about people by their favorite Star Treks, and I was like I really like Generations, make of that what you will, and
we do make of it.
Yeah. I don't know why I like that film. I like it's I enjoyed it. I think I've got great memories of watching it when it came out to cinema, and so every time I watch it, I just go back to. So I was just really enjoying the film. I think that it looks really good. The lighting in the film is wild, right? Like I don't know why you would light a starship like that. It'd be trouble navigating around the rooms, but it's got so much style to it. I really like it, and I kind of forgive it for that. And I think like some of the things I really like is when Picard is like just heard that his family in France
his mild breakdown, yes.
Yeah, but I love the sunlight as it comes through, right? And it looks like the sunset, and you're like, oh, I can almost feel that there's a star outside the ship in this lighting. I really like stuff like that. There are things in Generations I really like a lot.
Yeah, I obviously a little bit younger, and for me, I was shown Trek at 3, and I have this thing where I don't remember my life before a certain point. Really, it's hard to have tangible memories, so it's all just kind of an existence, and then I suddenly have memories. But let's say I remember only from 7 onwards, let's say. So everything is just sort of there in my brain. So I can't remember the first time watching almost anything. So it's just always just been in my psyche. So there's no like, I like First Contact because the first time I watched it, I think I remember watching Insurrection in the cinema. I definitely remember watching Nemesis in the cinema. I remember watching Enterprise live, but that's like 2004, so of course 2001. So all the early stuff, like I saw TOS and TNG sort of back like at the same time. So it's all possibly why I'm so biased. It's all just kind of one big chunk of knowing versus like, and then I saw this new big thing, and therefore I'm grab a hold of that kind of thing. It doesn't really.
Yeah.
Stargate for me is more that where that was more hit me at certain points in my life. But Trek has always been, which is why I remember when I was, I won't even say an age. It's probably quite embarrassing. I remember having this conversation with my parents with, and let me know if any of you also thought this who were younger in the audience. And click like. I remember asking my parents, how exactly did they like get James Doohan and Spock, I suppose, in TNG if they filmed like 50 years ago or 60 years ago? Because of course the TOS movies were filmed decades before TNG because the show takes place. And I had no concept they were filming them at the same time, but on different sets, on different eras. So I assumed Shatner was filmed conceptually 20, 30 years ago. It's like, how do they look the same? Or how is there a new TOS film when they've moved into TNG? Just that idea of temporal displacement I didn't understand at the time. Just silly, but also like to think you can film two eras at the same time in full seriousness is kind of.
It is strange, right? Like, because normally, I mean, the thing they're talking about now is confusing the audience with the new Trek. That there are so many different eras and different flavors of Trek that they're worried about that. But then, Berman went full at it, right? He's like, I'm going to put Kirk on the big screen, and I'm going to have the 24th century on the small screen, and I'm going to make that work until the TOS movies came around.
Well, also he only moved forwards, just forwards from 2 points. Versus
yes,
if you have a prequel, a new prequel, a side prequel. I mean, because the fact that you're releasing Lower Decks, which is a prequel to Picard, Picard's a sequel to Prodigy, Prodigy is a sequel to Lower Decks, prequel to Picard. Like that's if you're trying to keep track, I can understand why, because you're making 4 prequel sequels at the same time. Section 31's a prequel to Strange New Worlds, technically. If you look at when she left, but then a sequel, right?
Yes. Yeah. No. I can see why it would get confusing. And it was much cleaner back then. But even then, it's like, the rules are like, they were really strict with the rules when they made TV back in those days, right? Like they were like really concerned with audiences and maintaining audiences and clear branding and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
so,
it's amazing, and I although it's amazing how when you make films, some of this does apply, and it's amazing to be on the other end of the spectrum. When a producer says to DS9, you cannot include the Enterprise E because the audience will assume that that's the E in the fight.
Yes. Yeah.
Because of course there's only one sovereign class. And it's like you give the audience no credit. Now of course if you didn't say anything, it could be the E. So having a line or a registry would be the way of not having it. But to assume. But then I've done films where people have said, is that? And it's like, no. But it could be.
You do get those comments.
It's not, because it's not about the 99%, it is about the 1%. And then what if that 1% starts a letter writing campaign to do something, etc., etc.,
No, I was kind of like, I was like, no, of course people would understand that it's not, different ships made in the same model and stuff like that. And then you see a comment and you're like, oh, is that the Enterprise A? Even if you've got the line and you're like, no. But it's probably because they're watching quite casually. So maybe they've got something on, it's on the background, they're coming back in and back out.
Because that was the only reason we didn't get the Enterprise refit ever again.
Right, okay.
And it's like, wouldn't that have been lovely to see in DS9 Season 2, or TNG, the Excelsior? Obviously, there had not been the end of the Enterprise A, so you could linger. And of course, when they did commit to Scotty, they made a canon mistake because then they undid that in Generations. Fine, whatever. But they never built a E to use, and they built them, but not for DS9, and they built a Connie, so the class just dies.
Yeah.
And it would have been lovely.
It's interesting because in DS9, I forget the name of the ship, but you've got that. Is it? I can't remember the name of the ship, but you got the Galaxy class that gets blown up by the Dominion.
Yeah. So the Challenger.
And that's not.
Oh, I think it's Challenger. No, it's not Challenger. Odyssey.
I was going to go with an O. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so at that point they felt quite comfortable bringing in something that wasn't the Enterprise, right? I think when the show was off the air.
Comfortable is the wrong phrase. They were making a point, which was
Right.
our other hero can die. That was a really distinct choice. It's just because they didn't film it a year earlier, they lost the bridge. So therefore they have this tiny close-up that looks absolute trash.
Right.
Whereas if they just filmed it a year earlier, it's like the glorious set.
Yeah.
And it's not quite the same, but audience, whatever. There's an episode of TNG, which obviously the sets exist, where they board an Nebula class. And it's the same saucer, it's the same bridge. So you could have actually just had swap out the cast, a new cast, have a walk through the bridge. But without doing like what Lower Decks does, which is radically change the Elcar's colour and the painting, which is too much for a single scene, ostensibly. You can see why they wouldn't do that, because to walk off Enterprise D bridge onto Enterprise D for one scene, just do a different set, right? So I get that, and that's where fan films are wonderful, because especially my ones with the raw digital, we're not limited by the fact that, you know, we destroyed the set because we had to on day 19 to make it for a different set. If I want to throw in a Galaxy class bridge because YOLO for a flashback, yeah, click load, click render, click composite, boom. So it's a rather charming time to be around.
No, I find it strange that they got rid of the Enterprise D bridge at the end of the shoot, because normally film studios are notorious for saving things, right? Especially from successful shows, because they might use it later down the line, they'll find a use for it, and so I would have thought that they would have kept it, you know, but they didn't in this instance, and I was actually at SDRV just after Picard season 3. And I was at a couple of talks with Liz Kukowski and Dave Bless, and it was amazing to watch, right? Just after this show, the level of care that they took in recreating the bridge of the Enterprise, and there were some really nice moments in that talk where, like, Liz was talking about how she put this kind of like cardboard, thing with all of her reference material, right? And she'd actually put it in front of the main door, so when everybody walked into the set, everybody could see it, right? And she said, because not everybody who works on this is going to be a huge fan of Star Trek. We need the best people, and we need to make the best set we possibly can. So when they see that, although it may not be important to them, they will know that it is important to somebody else. And then she got something from this where they were doing the horseshoe, and they're painting in the wood grain. And she's like, we're not going to get this exactly the same. That's just not something we're going to do. And the painter's like, there, he's just like, I can get this knot for you in the same place. Do you want it in exactly the same place? And she's like, yes. Right. And so they got all of these extra things and all of this care that they took. It was kind of like this really synergistic exercise. And it was a very moving experience to kind of watch a production designer and an art director get a standing ovation in two different talks. When, it wasn't industry people, right? It was people who just loved the show, and they were so moved by the work that they just got up and stand.
I mean, every show is very, very different, and unfortunately, the nature of animated style changes how you can frame things. But Picard season 3 was the first show live action since Enterprise where they actually genuinely cared about the visual canon and about it matching and being close. Yes, evolving, but also matching. Who actually, and there are fans who've worked on other shows. I know some of them who either were disappointed by the team's need to change things, or left because they're just like, I can't. Like I've said before, is it better to work on bad Trek or no Trek? Like I would feel if I worked on Discovery season 1, I would feel a gut punch trying to do a space shot with 100% contrast and terrible ships. Like I would feel so bad. It's like I'm hurting Star Trek. So I couldn't really do it necessarily. Okay, double pay, fine, but right. But you look at TNG, they brought on significant amounts of fans. It was all the happenstance, right? Professional people who were very good, and the same legacy of people continued to evolve, brought new people all the way to Enterprise. So you have Doug, Mike, Denise, Rick, John, Andy, they all have love, so they can kind of. You could call it gatekeeping, but they've kept the fire alive. Then you get Discovery season 1, the point is to change everything. Strange Worlds points to change everything. Because season 1 points to update and change everything. Season 2, the point is the past for moot point. You get other shows, I don't know, whatever. And then season 3, oh, we're actually gonna do the show, and then suddenly everyone loves it because it makes sense. It's amazing. Now the Lower Decks and Project also cared, but you can't, like, even though Enterprise D Bridge is pretty not good in Prodigy, but if they only had, I don't know, but if they had 2 weeks and $5,000 and they can only pay whatever limitations, right? Not 1.7 million or whatever to build the D Bridge, and a bit different. But it's that's why I think people like fan films, because we tried to stick to, which is why if you want to jump to the super chat for K70, if you would.
It's not come up. Is there a super chat?
K70, £10. Love watching fan films. Do keep scrolling.
Oh, there you go. Got it.
There we go.
K70 for £10. Love watching fan films. Also remember to subscribe to K70 and watch out for our flagship show, Star Trek Defiant. We are now at 2,520 subs. Oh, well done. Congratulations. So yes, go and subscribe.
And he does mention later on that in our fan series, you try to keep it as close to how Gene's TOS Trek with the odd favorite Trek in the mix. It's funny, in this Wrath of Khan film, I had to build a new set, design a new set, I should say, and I the other team I mentioned at the start would super disagree with my thought process here, just for creativity, but I like working in the frame. Logically, if I was building a new Wrath of Khan set, right, for Wrath of Khan or Star Trek 3, like one of those two, and it was a set that was used, let's say, in 6 shots, what do you think they'd say? They'd say, we have no money.
Yeah.
We're stretched. What can we do? Okay, we've got these standing sets. We've got standing set pieces. How could we be creative? And guess what? When you think that way, you can create stuff that looks and feels authentic while being new. So I took a standing Wrath of Khan set I had. I took pieces from a different set that didn't quite exist yet, but existed close enough too, so they could have built it ahead of time. And I hid the original set as much as possible based on angles. And all of a sudden, some people get it, but the way I've done it, it's like, that's not that set, but it clearly is. And a Trekyards would say, that's a console. Like, you'd pick up on it. But the way it's framed, it's just, 1, 2, and 3. And by doing that, really limited, like, what do they physically have, it keeps it all authentic and be creative. That's why if I ever do a new fan film, happens rarely, of like they need a new set, I'll be like, well, the Voyager sets existed at the time, what can we use? Because they, as I still boggles my mind, 9 times out of 10 or whatever, they would rather like repaint the entire, let's say, Voyager corridor to be a new design, then build a new corridor. It's like, but then you got to paint it back and repair it, and you've just spent a week. But the framework, I guess, is just really expensive and complicated and whatever. So they keep painting and redoing sets. So like, I like that logic because it's what they could do, and it keeps you grounded. As soon as you can like extend the ceiling or the set space like Stranger World does, instantly the set feels silly, because of course they're not going to build the Stranger World corridor in TOS Enterprise. It's too big. Of course Pike's corridors is so ridiculous, it takes you out of it, and you have to just go into his own fanciful mind state of, they were never going to give that. That's the size of 2 bridges. Of course he's not going to have that much room, but because they can do whatever they want, they've made space. So I like limiting, but it keeps it together. I mean, does that sound too limiting, or does it sound creative?
No.
What do you think? What's your reaction to that?
I think you've got to see. I think one of the things that's always been the challenge, especially with older Trek, right, because of the technological limitations, was seeing the connection between the inside of the ship and the outside of the ship. What's a set, and then what's the actual ship? And it was actually it was. I don't know if are you familiar with the IRML? He does like Star Trek renders, and they look amazing. And I was watching one of his observation. It was the E one that he did.
8 years now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, but it was this amazing moment where it wasn't even anything to do with the rendering or anything like this. It's when the camera goes down and you see the nacelles out of the back of the observation lounge, and you can see the connection between the outside of the ship and the inside of the ship. And I'm like, this looks amazing. This is like literally, I pinched that idea for this shot here. When I was modeling the ship, right, I made sure I had a window in there where we could look out of the back of the ship and see the nacelles, because that was a moment I really looked at. Something that was fan created, right? It's just done pure love of the franchise, and I was just like, that looks amazing, and really, just blew my mind. So, yeah, that connection between it's one of the things I think interesting was the size of the sets really does limit that connection between are we inside the starship, because it looks like it's huge right on the inside. It's more of a TARDIS than it is a starship, right? You know, at times.
And it's limiting, but I just like to think, what could they have done?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, I don't know. It's it's
Yeah.
literally the DNA of taking the Phase 2 engineering set, making it TMP, making it Star Trek TNG, making it Star Trek 6, making it Voyager, and then a separate room. Like, the same walls. Like,
Mm-hmm.
side note, did you know the NX-01 bridge is the Defiant bridge?
I did not know that.
It's the exact same set. They just took out all the consoles and redesigned.
Right.
It's the
okay.
same exact space. And when you realize
That's
that,
crazy.
despite feeling entirely different, then you're like, oh, there's a legacy factor.
Yeah.
And they thought it was cheaper not to take it down, even though it's a different ship. It's the same set.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always found that pretty wonderful.
You get into the nuances, but also like I remember something that Greg Fraser said when he was talking about Dune, and he said, you know, we're working on like a $200 million film, and we still don't have enough money, right? Because producers go through every item in the budget, and then go, do you need this $50 thing? And you're like, you know, like, just let me have the $50 thing, and they're like, no, you got to justify everything in the budget, right? You know.
And not quite the same, but similar. People have often asked me, is making fan films quicker now than it was 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you get a new PC or a new camera, the standards go up, so the rendering speed stays the same, because the bar is now higher. If I was doing the quality of 10 years ago, of course it would zip. But now you're doing 4K for background plates, you're doing a high anti-aliasing, you're doing... So you always are fighting. You know, now I record in 6K, downscale to 4K, with a bit rate that's absurd.
I did
the
the
5D compressed. Very different.
No, I did the proof of concepts in 2K. Mainly not because the camera couldn't do 4K, but because the rendering on the ships was going to take forever, and all the CGI and stuff like that. I still had huge interrupts of the smoke shot with the shuttle, which was actually supplied by Matt Boardman. So thank you, Matt, for sending that over. You know, just the smoke and just... So I did a thing where I tried different ways of trying to do it. I don't know if you like kind of got to this yet, where like I was using Embergen. Have you tried Embergen now? Yeah. Embergen's like this GPU accelerated fire renderer, but you can't render it out on your plate, and you can't get the surrounding lights. So I ended up going back into cinema, and because the smoke just had this different quality where it sat in the scene better, and it didn't look like it was composited flat on top of it. And so I just took the hit on render time. It was a big hit on render time, but I just thought it looked a bit more real. It looked a bit fuller, and I was just like, the one that's...
Yeah, it's I mean, it's self-imposed, but I made the last Prodigy film in 14 days from script to release. And obviously you have to just don't do paid work for most of those days to do it. But then you do all these rendering, it's like, well, that's going to take me, you know, 17 hours of my 2 weeks, and I've got 10 of those. You know, you have to work out what's good, what's bad, where you can compromise, and yet I still manage to do it. So
do you make the timer? So I'm going to do this 14 days in the winter, so I can save on my heating bill, and my computer can heat up my entire...
Oh yeah, I mean, winter, I'm always rendering, so I've always got things I need to be doing. Yeah, in the winter I'm always warm. And I've currently got an aircon and a fan. Yeah. Because I am rendering, I'm doing this, and it's a small office. Yeah, it's I'm always like 4 degrees, if not 5, hotter in this room than any other part of the house. And if you're at 30, you're at 30. Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, I've had days where it's been 36 degrees for a good 8 hours because it's so hot, and then the computer's just going...
Yeah, I remember once the 42 day, if you remember from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I had a really big deadline that week. Great. So I pulled my PC out, so it was just out of my like desk area, and I pointed the aircon at full at the CPU and GPU because it obviously was not able to cope with it. So I just all the cold air hitting it. So the PC was fine, kind of, but I literally had I invested big when I bought it, like £600 aircon throwing full power at a computer just so it would work in a 42-degree day. Couldn't not work, and it did work, luckily. But we have a question, though. We have a few questions.
Okay.
But we're having a fun back and forth. And if you guys do have questions, we can do a whole load of those. So throw in questions, including like these amazing renders, which, stuff I like.
Mm-hmm.
I like it all, of course, but the technical stuff. But you have a question, and let me read it out once I re-find it. So this is Donnie, the classic. You know Donnie.
I do know Donnie. Hello, Donnie.
Question for Oliver. What does he think of the resurrected Starship's version of what Enterprise should have looked in both Starship Discovery and Strange New Worlds?
I understand why they felt that they needed to update it a little bit, because you need to bring a new audience in and you need to keep those production values high. I do think they went a little far in Strange New Worlds.
No, it means the resurrected Starship's Enterprise, the custom one he designed.
Sorry. Which one's that? Sorry.
From the Resurrected Starships channel, he made a custom Connie. He's a.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one. Sorry, that's why I didn't understand the question.
That's okay. If you Google Resurrected Starships,
I will do. Let me do that.
I'll put the link, or a link. Done a lot of good stuff. Let's have a look. Where would that one be, Donnie? As in, because he's done a lot of videos. Okay, Don, you might have to tell us which version of which video, because I'm even Googling that and it's not quite finding the right one, so let us know. But he's a smart cookie. Let's see. Yeah. Slightly silly question, but Madness 201. Did you or did you not like the copy and paste fleet in Picard season 1?
I think we all want to see different starships, right? It did look a little. I didn't even notice there were 2 different variants. That's how similar the ships were the first time I watched it. So it makes sense in one way, like if you've designed a whole new batch of ships, that you can see them there. But it did feel, I think, with the level of technology and what we expected CGI, it felt it was copy and paste Starship. So it would be nice to see new ships, maybe some old ones, spread in between them intermittently. They probably could have done a better job, maybe hiding them in the background a little bit more, because if they were going to use STO models, they're probably not going to be at the same resolution or fidelity as the hero ships that they use. So yeah, I don't know how you felt about it. I mean, I know how you felt about this all the life, but
yeah, it would have been fine if there was 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But the more they added, the more silly it was, because to build that many is ridiculous, and then it feels like it's so impressive having 10 ships in a fleet already in Trek. Having 50 that are just instants is lazy, even though it's actually more work and it actually looks worse.
I agree. And it's that kind of like that scale of where, I actually don't mind the battle so much at the end of Discovery season 2, where it's a mess, right?
Noise.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where you kind of argue that it's more realistic, but does it make better TV or cinema, right? And sometimes those battle sequences, and not just Trek, it's just in everything, when they get too big, that you just kind of like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know if I'm feeling anything too much at it. But
well, I mean, visually it's more impressive, but I think, as someone who's made many battles, that the Nemesis fight is infinitely better because it's 1 ship versus 1, and then 3 versus 1, and then 1 versus 1. It's focused.
You get to focus on all.
It's impressive, but just 500 drones versus 500 drones versus 500 drones versus 3 capital ships, and nothing matters. And there's no one on any of the ships, so no loss means anything. Yeah, it's noise.
Yeah, the scimitar battle sequences is like, then you're focusing on the details of what's happening in the battle, and then each moment becomes more relevant and therefore more interesting. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that completely. I'm just trying to read the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. I didn't read out Classic for Real's $2 super chat. If you still can't hear Sam saying Daisy's amazing.
Yes, he does love
Daisy is
anime.
amazing.
Does love his anime. You know, classic. He's
Yes, yes, very much. Always active in the chat.
what a lad.
Classic.
So we've got these two shots which are both lovely. Now, was this the fact that I've asked this is a good thing? Is that man on this? Is that a location in England near you? Is that a local destroyed quarry desert scape that's local in, you know, Kent or Hemel Hempstead? Is that a local place near you? Because I don't remember that in England.
It's not. No. So we did look at real quarries, but ultimately they were in the north of Wales, and it would have just cost us a fortune to get there and back and stay. There was one place that looked quite similar to this, but it looked really good. But ultimately, then you need the weather to be good in Wales, which limits you to 4 days in the year where that was actually a possibility. And I am Welsh as well, so I get to make these jokes. But the other thing is, we just didn't have the time for the proof of concept, and we were just like, let's do it for the real thing, and like let's get those resources if we're going to be there for a couple of days, and we're going to get a lot of footage out of it. But Paul lived down in Brighton, and we ran around just in Brighton for a day. So we did. It wasn't really 2 day shoot; it was really about 1.5. The seeing the TV had to be done at the dead of night because of the reflection on the screen. And if I were shooting in a black room, this would be fine, but I'm not, and I rent, so it's got white walls.
So you're
Otherwise, we
saying
shot really late.
this live at sort of 10 a.m. would not
Perfect.
work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, super.
So we were shooting late at night, so we shot at 2 a.m. and then just went all the way through and did that. But then so then we did another day, then we just ran around and grabbed all the location stuff. But what happened was the shot of his reverse, right, so the close-up, is all real and in camera, and it's shot at sunset. And there was something about the shot that I looked at and I was just like, I'm never going to get this again. And then I shot the reverse of it, and I had actually mucked up. The camera was slightly out of focus. I'm using a really small monitor, and it looked in focus on my monitor, and I'm a hair out of focus because I'm focusing off into the distance, but I'm not at infinity, and I thought I was in infinity, and I'm actually slightly wrong. So that means I'd have to bring the shuttle forward, and then it wouldn't look as far and look as epic as it was. I had the forethought to think of things always go wrong when you're shooting, so I shot a safety of Paul being in focus. And so what I did for this shot is I actually rotoed Paul out of the shot. And then I used Megascans assets to recreate the background. And I should have done, but we ran out of time and the light was changing so quickly because we were shooting at sunset. I didn't take a spherical map of the environment, which I was going to do. But luckily, because it was just literally actually just long grass in the real shot, I could actually just extend that and duplicate it and blend them two together. So the lighting comes from the lighting of the space. And then so I'm lighting the rocks, the Megastans rocks, with the spherical map. I want to say HDRI, but it's technically not HDRI. The spherical map that I manufactured. So that lighting matches, and then I've got a point light coming off the side to give the hard shadows, to give it a bit of shape and depth. And then I just put the shuttle in and set it on fire and stuff like that. So it's a lot more work than
Because it's pretty good.
It actually looks.
It's pretty
good.
good.
Oh, thanks very much. Cheers.
But it's the hardest shot you probably to do because it's full CG, basically.
Yes.
But full CG and trying to look as real as possible. Ships are fiction. They can have varying degrees. I mean, if you go the full NASA route, it can look real. Then we're like Star Trek, right? Or if you go the full Starship route, it will look CG. But the way I do it is more just Star Trek CG. So the fact that it's cool. So I could tell he's painted out because just I can. But his blur is really well integrated. Like the choice of how much blur is what sells that to me. While being fake, it's like how he did it fake. I was like, is it a roto? Is it a still? Is it a green screen? Is it like I was wondering which slant of fake because it's so well integrated. If that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, so it's basically one of the things that was quite nice. Is if we shoot it on a green screen, we'd find it hard to match the light, right? It would be one of the things that's really hard. And the thing I was really worried about was, again, the semi-transparency. So when you cut it out and then you get, that it really looks like. So when I'd taken the safety shot, I made sure he was in focus, so I'd re-blur him out so we wouldn't get that edge. And then I really like the quality of light in the close-up on the reverse. I just thought just this really nice quality to it. And sometimes, I mean, you'll have had this when you shoot something. You shoot it once, and no matter how many times you repeat it, you just can't get the same feeling again in a shot, and you've got to rescue that other shot. And so that was basically it was a bit of a rescue job. I'm not gonna lie. I have Geet asking me how many times I re-rendered out the rocks. It wasn't that bad. There was a lot of tests, and also Geet gets all of my footage. So she's seen the film 750 times. Is this slight difference in blue better than this slight difference in blue? And is this position of the ship that's 4 pixels over better than this shot of the ship that's 4 pixels?
Well, I think
it's a lot of that
I
stuff.
think the real question then is, was version 203 worse or better than 406? And at timecode 427, is the change between 407 to 502, was it worth it? Because I think that we all know that the 47th pixel on the left, on the bottom hand side, is too dark now.
I mean, it's a debate, right? You've got to have these debates.
I like that. Oh god. Okay, this is dumb, but I'll tell you this little brief story. When I did my university course of filmmaking, media production, it was the, let's say, third year. It was the third or fourth year, and it was one of the 3 moduled short films I had to deliver. And I did everything on my own home PC, standard fare, etc. in Premiere, whatever. Fine, great. And I handed it in, and it was only 4 minutes, so we watched it. I technically showed it before it was due because I don't remember why I just did. And he watched it in like not a real projector room, but a room. And he watched it, said he liked it, good cinematography, good. But he thought the color grading was too blue, and that's going to take a point off. So I got a B.
Oh,
literally. And it's like, it wasn't that blue on my monitor, so I didn't grade it that blue. Your monitor on this particular PC, which is not calibrated, it's the monitor they had, this made it bluer than I saw. So I was like, huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a bitch slap, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. It's one of those things that's like, especially back then, right? Like it's not like it is today.
Yeah, 2013.
Right? Everything's a bit more standard. Yeah. So I think that's subjective though, because if you look at how blue and how green some things can be in professional productions, is that something you could really deduct a point for in say like an objective capacity to say this is objectively bad film?
I'm mildly
And I don't
resented.
think so.
I mildly resented my photography lecturer because everything he graded was on personal preference. Now, of course, photos even more subjective, right? Fine. But if it wasn't his style, and so I remember by the end of the course, we just started doing shots he liked because that's how you got grades. I remember some people lamenting like that's not how I do it. They got a B plus. It's like, luckily, film is more technical. Like, I'm quite lucky. I think we talked about this. No, it wasn't. It was the chap at the event. I can sense a half a frame or half a second editing that doesn't feel right, which is very lucky that I can feel that. So I'm good at getting really crisp edits. Thank goodness. Sometimes footage depending, right? Like if someone's mouth won't match take B, you can't fix it no matter how you go. But like an edit, I'm quite good at feeling that. So you can be more like, that's clearly a bad edit, and here are the 10 reasons why. Whereas a picture is more subjective because the blue is too blue. But an edit's bad. That's why someone's a CG effect, you can say good or bad. Because that, the stars are too bright because this. But then you get the art side. And that art can't override the technical.
There's a lot of talk in the like kind of like the filmmaking YouTube space about like color nowadays, right? Everything's really flat nowadays, and people blame visual effects. But then you look at say something that in Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic Park, it's like CGI at that time was not that good in films, and Spielberg managed to put a film together that looked really, really good. but it's got a lot of shape, it's got a lot of shadow, it's got a lot of depth. And I think it's less the visual effects, and it's more to do with the fact that people haven't made up their mind on what they want the shot to look like. They want to like, we'll change it. We can change the lighting, we can change the color, we can do all of this post. So we capture as much detail as possible. And I'm like, then you don't get what you want. You're kind of like in a kind of middle gray area, which people seem to be complaining about. And the reason why I bring this up is kind of like, there's a kind of technical aspect of like, yes, you can see more detail in the shot, right? Which is technically better cinematography and something you would get a higher grade for. But then you look at some of the old classic films, you look at something like Gladiator, and no one would say that Gladiator is shot badly. Highlights are blowing out white, lots of deep shadows, some grain that's crazy high in certain shots. And it's a beautiful film. And, you know, it's one of the, and stand the test of time as one of the most beautiful films ever made. And so it's kind of like, well, then you're getting into this kind of technical objectivity and artistic thing. And it gets very hard to tell the difference and kind of say, does this work? Even though it's technically not, it's 90% of the way there, not 100%.
Well,
it's a very, very hard thing to say.
There's two examples of modern filmmaking which is defined by the era, where you have the couple of years where most film posters and a lot of films had the green and the yellow as contrasting, and they were in a lot of scenes with just those as bright, the two sides.
Yeah.
And so it's a style, but it's like, A, you're locked in, you can't change it, and B, it's of that like 2 years. In a similar vein, when the first Bourne and the second, especially the third Bourne film came out, it had a sort of a very muted and kind of contrasty grade, which then became a standard for action films. I think Taken 2 had like, there was some, that was just a style, and now you've got those years where that's the style. You look at like Gladiator, that really wasn't a concept at the time. He shot the film he wanted to look historical but not, real but not, and so he gave it sort of a more through a window version with a bit of style but not over the top. And of course for CG, what CG there was, they could count the number of shots. Now that might seem like an odd statement, but when you've got Jurassic Park with like, there are 47 visual effects shots, I went through them and they might have taken 6 months per like for some of them, and you look at, you know, the recent Thunderbolts, there might be 4,850 visual effects shots. But if you're trying to, for some whatever god-awful reason, you're having to like give one actor CGI crest, arm, like this piece must now be fancy, and now in every single shot there's some guy destroying his sanity to manually do this augment on like 470 shots. And you never once think that's a CG shot, which is great. But the artistry is just to maintain. It's like, I can't believe that in Avengers Endgame they're not wearing real suits for the time travel sequences. They're all CG suits. Mind-boggling. Incredible, because you don't think it is, but that's like thousands of shots. And so therefore, like you say, it's like, well, you're not picking the moments, Jurassic Park. It's like, these are storyboarded to hell, because each shot is going to be, take two, cost another 80k to redo, etc. Which is actually bad to fan films, why we have to be strategic, because of course, less so with me, because I do, as you as well, but you have less free time than I do. I say free time, I just devote less time. You know, there's a salary to do this stuff, and there isn't just the unlimited resources. We can go as big as we want, or as small as you want, but knowing these are 5 shots I need, these are the 7 shots I'll make a difference, that matters. And so when I do the documentaries, like I'm highlighting the limitation of, I want 20 minutes of live action. I can't do 45 green screen plates, so it's all an interview format, and having these highlight moments as the colorways, each of which can be special because that's the style. And so you've also gone with, how do I limit no green screen, create this background style, and then these other moments like the very elaborate destruction shuttle shot. You're picking a few big things that are big, you can highlight. But if, for example, you'd said to yourself, right, we actually want him to walk up to that shuttle and interact with it, and each shot is on fire, and because you're a bit nerdy and intense, you want the fire sim to actually match continuity wise, and it's freehand, because your cinematographer was a bit of a dick and said, I want to do freehand, and so one tracking mark, you know, like,
as I'm the cinematographer, he is a bit of a dick, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Beautiful. And now suddenly you're like, this one sequence of 5 shots, of 7 shots, is like, oh my god, just for the sake of seeing a shuttle sequence. It's amazing priorities, and just people don't quite realize, right? People don't quite realize.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, the level of work they do now is insane, right? Like just on these things, and you do get this thing of like you feel that you can see CGI, but you actually only notice the CGI you actually notice, and you don't notice a lot of the work. Like I didn't notice any of the CGI in Top Gun Maverick. If you told me that was all shot for real, those planes, I would have been like, yeah, that was all shot for real. And then you're looking behind the scenes, and the planes aren't even the same planes as you see in the finished version, so
Because
they're
they can't
clearly
be.
not the real
Legally
planes.
can't
Yeah.
shoot that way.
Mm.
Yeah. But if you've got a real plane with roughly the same materials in the right lighting, then because most of the CGI in integration is you don't know how real interacts. If you've got another reel with the same material, you can tweak until you get to the point. Like I did a shot of the TARDIS landed in a field once, and it was super difficult because how does wood interact with grass? Blue wood, deep dark blue wood. Turns out not a lot, and it looked kind of terrible.
Yeah.
But in real, you wouldn't think anything of it. But as CG, it felt to me personally weird. So I overlit. I did things because like artistically it was wrong, because it's just bloody wood. Like it has no reflection. It has no highlights. The sun is not bright enough to create highlights. So, like a very unique example, but there was no reference. As if I'd had even a mini TARDIS, I could have like matched and thought about it.
Right, yeah. I mean, it is that thing. I mean, but people in film have been cheating for years, right? Adding a little light to make it bling and make it feel a little bit more interesting and stuff like that. And I think it's just like, I think it gets to a point where even with the CGI, you got to make it look a little not real. And it's the skill of the artist is how to not draw your attention to the fact it's not real. It just looks enhanced, right? You know, that's generally.
Well, a tremendous example is the recent, not that recent I suppose, but Dune Part 2, which of course they didn't fly ornithopters to a desert and blow up a mountain.
Yeah.
But that one shot of Timothy when it's blowing up, and it's just everything about it is expertly done. And you could believe it's real because it's grounded, it's lit beautifully, it's limited in how they did The Sims to not be ridiculous. It's paced in a way that like has weight, and it's like, damn, that's bullshit. But it has a weight versus a Marvel film conventionally where you're like, yeah, they didn't really destroy that building, but it doesn't matter, it's artistic, which is fine, but it's also trying to be over the top. Whereas Dune, it's a very like grounded, and it's hard. It's obviously CG, but like, damn, you know.
It's, and you know, it's sometimes, you know, harder to get that realism right with a copter that can't fly, right? Like I don't think those helicopters are airworthy, but they did a great job on that. Like it looked amazing, right? And it's just, you can see that even though it's simple, it's very elegant solutions to stuff, and that looks incredibly high production value on the screen.
Quite clever. But we've got some ship-based questions, which we do of course love. So let's get into that a little bit. But I would say some more super chats would be tremendous. Even $2 are some pointed questions. Maybe some, you know, really technical, annoying questions. I mean, maybe we can out-question the designer. Oh my god. Maybe. Don't know. So yeah, there's a ship. And
challenge accepted.
Oh, there we go. So we are going to look at this another day in absolute depth, because of course Trekyards is Trekyards. But yeah, the first question, someone I saw in the chat, is there a bridge window? And I'll add to that. This, yes. If so, then why?
Okay, so actually, this is a debate that I had with Geet that I literally have been referencing this entire chat. Well, we were talking about, would there be glass in the windows or would it be force fields, right? And Geet came up with the brilliant point is the power on these ships goes out all the time. So it wouldn't be glass, actually. It should be diamond. And the reason why I say diamond is you live in a universe with replicators and they use diamond on the ISS in a diamond glass composite. So a lot of people would say transparent aluminium. Yes, aluminium. But thinking about kind of like the kind of thing is if power were ever to go out, because there is that shot in First Contact where Picard lifts up that barrier and then there's a force field as they look down onto Earth. But you've got a barrier there and it has to be taken up so that can seal itself if the power goes out. So in the fact that this is a little mini observation lounge at the back of the saucer section. Yeah, I imagine there to be glass or a diamond composite. That's how I rationalized it. It wasn't like we didn't put any thought into it. I think that will be a divisive thing where fans will kind of agree and disagree whether it should be solely force fields or it should have some physical barrier there. But
so is it a bridge
that was the
window at
rationale.
the top? Is there a 4 window bridge window
Are you talking about on the front of the ship?
where the bridge is?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about this one. Oh, sorry. Okay, no, all right, okay. No, that is actually, so the bridge is the little capsule on the top, and the little bit underneath is actually a hallway with some rooms. It's actually an L-shaped hallway that goes like that, and there are some rooms like that. And so the stairs go up because of the back. It's just in case the turbo lifts go out, you still got a staircase that goes up there, and and then at the back of that section is the observation lounge, which I'm sitting in right now.
Of course you are.
Yeah, 100%.
Mark says, had to get to another stopping point, but gladly made a contribution to this fan film. Yes, let me refresh the page, and we do of course encourage any and all. There you go. You've now got a higher number.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's very kind of you.
Like there's 23 of you. He's at 750 now. We'd love him to get to 800 during this live. That's £50. Can anyone put in a couple of 5s? I mean, it isn't a lot. It does go a long way. I mean, his lowest is 10 for Ensign, but hey, a couple of 10s. 5 10s to get us 800. Just saying.
Yes, very true. But no, thank you so much for donating. I really, really appreciate it. I haven't got the live tally up at the moment, but
it takes people to support people, and we be crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, no. You know, it's window such. I don't know if there is necessarily an argument because the way they frame the first contact scene was it was a bonus observation space, and therefore it's default closed, but you can open it to look if you want to. But default closed,
Right.
therefore the armor of the hull is the default, whereas any window is a window with glass. Because yes, it would be if every window on the ship had a shutter, then it could be a force field, but it would need to be a window with a glass if it's designed to be open at all times. Only force was only for special cases.
That's what I thought as well. But I had been to some conventions and people had said there's no glass. So that is something I'd heard from a couple of people.
There's a technical argument in that Jonathan Frakes puts his hand through the glass several times in TNG when he's not looking properly. And to answer that, there's no glass, fine, but also shut the hell up. No, yeah.
Because isn't in the first 2 seasons of TNG, you see some reflections of light in some what looks like plastic that they've got on the physical set.
I mean, there is no
as
physical...
Picard is looking.
I mean, there is... Well, yeah, so there's no glass in any window because that would be silly. But yes, there is some shots of Picard in his ready room
looking out
for fun reflections.
I just thought they removed it because they didn't want reflections and they would just want to shoot them quickly. And
well, it's more sci-fi.
Yeah.
You know, and boy, it would suck to see a reflection of your camera guy in the window and have to paint that out. Yeah, no, I
mean, nowadays they'd recreate the whole set and replace the fuss in the background.
Yeah, and do a digi double of everybody and have a
yeah.
No, I mean, you know, windows are tricky because if you were going more serious, you'd say there were glass that has a slight energy field through it that makes it translucent. But then if you turn it off, it's actually armor and it goes armor closed. So it's not actually a window, it's the hull with a custom cutout that can go translucent. So you have your cakenated too. Right. So if the ship was out of power, it would be entirely windowless and it would just be solid armor, which is the safest way of doing it. But then that's kind of boring and doesn't and goes against everything we see in Trek. But that would be the techiest way of doing it. Because force field is never a good plan because people die. Like it's too much of a safety hazard, right? It's ridiculous. That's why, by the way, bridge windows.
They do like killing people in Trek, though. So you know it's very cinematic to kill a lot of people. So they do like.
Yes, I do expect to see. The bridge styrofoam rocks. I expect to see someone in your film on the bridge in the captain's
Oh, yeah.
chair and just
Just
rocks
literally, yeah.
throwing at them. I need to see it.
Actually, it's one of the comments that I had because I uploaded obviously a couple of stills I rendered out to the Trekyards Facebook group,
As you should.
and so actually a lot of the comments were really positive, but a couple of the things that came up with it, people thought there were too many windows, and I did have I had a thought process of like where I was going to put the windows, and I was trying to like thinking about you'd want to look out of the ship. You didn't, but if you were sitting in a ship and it's not a battleship, this is the idea of the ship was it's the successor to the Nova class. So what I did when I was coming up with the shape of it was the idea was low mass, high warp, right? So the idea is you use the same amount of warp coils, but it can actually go to higher warp factors because it's got less mass and therefore can go further when tethered to a starbase. So that was it. But then in the story context of it, it never really worked that well. It was a great idea on paper, but it never really worked that well. So yeah, it's a weird kind of thing that I have when I come up with stories, is that I always like the underdog in ships. I wouldn't want to use a Galaxy class because the Galaxy class is the best ship. I much prefer like an Intrepid, right? Where it's really limited in what it can do, but it's also a cool ship, right?
How's the Intrepid limited to what it can do compared to a Galaxy?
It's a bit smaller. It's smaller and it's less powerful, right? I mean, not really, but
I would
the
debate
idea
there. I
is
would debate they're about the same power level, because it's more. I mean, if you're literally saying the Galaxy from either when launch or TNG versus the Intrepid at launch, because the Intrepid has post-War 359 weapon upgrades, which are going to be far more advanced. The shields are far better. The armor's better. The phasers are better. Torpedoes are better. The warp's faster. Far more maneuverable. Better firing arcs. Warp core's more
the
advanced.
reason I brought it up is I heard
Sorry,
in
I
an
have this
interview
complaint with
somewhere.
people.
No,
Right?
no, 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 it's fine. I wasn't going over like I do understand what you're saying. What you're saying like makes a lot of sense, right? If you measure the two ships together, yeah. But no, I was talking about like someone was giving an interview, and I can't remember if it was Braga or someone like that, but they were talking about making the ship smaller so it gave you more story points to go from, right? Like that was the kind of idea of it. And I obviously went extreme to put it into a Nova size, vessel, because the idea is that there's a kind of a second part to this fan film. So we got this part that's set completely on the planet, and that's what we're crowdfunding for at the moment. But then the ship leaves the planet, and then it goes up against a Negvar, and the idea is then that you would have these huge size differentials, and you would have a genetically modified admiral. He's in custody at this point, and he would come out onto the bridge, and you would see the only way they can get away with this is to essentially cheat, right? To put someone who's so overpowered, and now he doesn't have to hide the fact that he's genetically modified. He can do a lot more things. And unlike Khan, he's trained in 24th century battle tactics. So the thinking of three-dimensionally, right, is not going to be a problem for him, right? He's going to be able to do this stuff. But his real challenge is he's in a really underpowered ship, right? And so how does he get out of this? This was the first idea I had for a fan film, and then I thought about doing it, and it was very, very, very expensive. And so I decided to do a prequel first, and then see how we do with the prequel, and then if that goes well, then we'll do the second part. So,
Yeah, I'm also a firm believer of wasting far more of your time to tell prequels to help another story. You also have to waste time on to tell it better.
It's not that they're two parts of the same story, so they are very, very different stories. This is very much about the dialogue and the history of the characters. Yeah. This one, and it was written with that idea of those Trek episodes where they're abandoned on a planet, and I love those episodes. We really learn about people, and you get to know about all of that stuff. And then the other one is really they're really two very different stories. So I'm not sacrificing on one to do the other. It's just the reason why I bring it up is this ship is very much designed with the context of that story in mind. Where in this one, in the first one, it could be any starship. It's just, but because I'd already built the starship by this point, I was going to use the starship that I'd already built.
Yeah, and
a lot of work into it.
Not exactly what Picard Season 3 was, but it was very much we want the weak, incapable ship to go against the Shrike. Unfortunately, then became the Enterprise, which sort of betrays the Enterprise a bit by having one of the weakest ships in the fleet be the flagship and be killable by anything. Neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And it is fair to say there is too many windows, but it's also because you're doing the common mistake of them all being on, which is a common
Right, yeah.
mistake, because windows are not for corridors, windows are for rooms, because they're there for people to
Yes.
look out, and therefore people aren't all awake at the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore not half, a third of the windows are not going to be on. And that's like, so maybe thing you can modify. One of the common
Yeah,
mistakes is just
definitely.
not to have them all on, because it also betrays scale. Just is a common thing. But at least we've got real rooms. You see geometry, the color variation.
Yeah.
Although, and again, you want me to be a bit technical here. The light bleed on the big window is overbearing, because that means the room inside is absurdly bright. It
Yeah,
wouldn't
it is. I
reflect
mean,
that much. It just wouldn't,
Mhm.
especially as Trek rooms are designed to like block light, so it's a nice balance
Mhm.
inside. So for the light to go out, that means that light has to go in the same way. More
Are you
like
talking about
generations, but yeah.
the little? Are you talking about the arboretum that I've got? The little.
Whichever the three
No.
big windows are on the side,
Oh, you're right. Okay,
they
yeah,
shouldn't have that
they're
much bleed
kind of
out.
semi-arboretum, not really
Yeah,
arboretum.
I
Kind of
I get
boring
the
and guns.
impetus to have interactive lighting, but
Mm.
it stands out like a sore thumb of being like, is there now a thin plane of like plexiglass for the light to penetrate that much?
Mhm.
That's one of the okay. So again, gut reaction for you. Do you prefer lightsabers or lightsabers? The old approach, which is it's a rod that they can fight with stronger and they light it in post, so no interactive lighting, or it's a physical LED tube they can't hit as far, can't be as bright, but it lights the actor. Gut reaction, which you prefer?
I like both for different reasons. I
Good.
like
Gut
the visual
reaction.
style. Yeah, gut reaction is I like the new pretty lightsabers. That's what I really like.
Yeah. But then on Obi-Wan Kenobi, because the blue was destroying the lens sensor, they locked in a lot of their color detail, so a lot of the night shots look awful because it was a real saber
Right.
doing real light. Had it been a fake saber, they could have had all the correct face work, and it actually damaged the film process. They hadn't quite realized that, yeah, that level of bright blue next to a face, you're burning in all of these problems. It looks like a fan film, because that's what real fans would do, versus the clever digital. Whereas if you look at the prequels, there's a certain disconnect, but now they look like advanced light swords because they're lighting in a way that's brighter than you can physically get. Versus Acolyte, where they're so dim because they're actually on set. You cannot make a lightsaber look bright on a sunny day with
Yeah.
technology now. So it now looks
Mm.
a bit weedy. So in the same vein,
Mm.
Voyager, wonderful miniature, all the windows end at the point of the glass. And that's always been the
Mhm.
look. And so that tells you as the audience member, it's stopping the light. Versus if you have
Mhm.
light leak, then you're changing the feel entirely from the tech that's advanced because you're not letting interaction happen to now interaction. And you're thinking, oh, is the glass weaker? Is the light brighter? You know what I mean? Not even the E with real whatever. Not even Discovery does it really. Sorry,
Mhm.
these aren't critiques. I just know a bit about ships.
No, yeah. It's so, yeah. I mean, I was trying to get like, I mean, my thought process behind it was I really like it when you see the light hit everything. And so I just made everything really, really bright. And the idea of the fill light, you need fill light when you're doing Star Trek ships. Otherwise, they just don't look like Star Trek ships, right? But is the idea that this camera, this futuristic camera I'm shooting the film with, this virtual camera, is so overexposed, right? The light's actually really weak in the shot. And so basically all of those other lights become super bright in that. And so what I've done is I've actually toned down the interior lights to keep some detail in the windows, although they blow out insanely. So that was kind of my thought process, right or wrong. That's kind of how I thought about it.
That's why it's a stylistically unique your shot.
Because
this is not unlike any other Trek CG I've seen, which is both a compliment and not.
Thanks.
You're welcome. But it's also kind of charming, and I encourage
Mm.
fans who want to make films like TOS, great, but the ship is limited. I'm pretty much the only one doing post TNG, and Nick of course is using my CG. Robin hit a little bit, cool, hasn't released a film in a while, so it's nice someone's doing post TNG, but then you're creating a new style because you're applying a far more CG look to the more limited CG look. Because of course the irony being, when the CGI on Voyager replaced the miniature work, they used scans of the miniature to texture the CG, and because light was working in an old style way, it looked more like a miniature, which is what they were going for to match the look. So they kept the miniature look longer. The NX-01, of course, a bit more metally reflective, but it was still limited by lighting. And now you're going the full CG, where you're now using the CGI tools where everything can interact and everything be real, and you're letting it blossom, which now looks less like Trek, but now gives its own identity as being almost like the real ship flying in space, but in a more CG way. It's right.
Yeah.
It's all so so interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's one of those things. Like I tried a more metallic look on it. I put a bit of an IOR on it, but ultimately, I thought it just didn't look like. I mean, my North Star was First Contact. I thought the model in that looked amazing. I think that I'd never done a Starship before. I was like, I can model a phone in cinema. I'll be able to do a Starship, and then
Pretty good then
quickly
for a
realized,
first
well,
time.
cheers, thanks a lot. It was a lot of kind of like a lot of me figuring out. I even started the ship not knowing how to put the windows in. Right, I was just like, I'll figure it out when I get to putting the windows in. I just had no clue what I was going to do. And so I kind of like, but then you test it and you have that really reflective metal, and then it just doesn't really work, right? It doesn't look as aesthetically that pleasing. And then I was looking back at kind of like the model for the E, and I was like, oh, it is actually just this kind of, it's more plasticky, right? It's more like a white plastic, right? And it looks really good. And so I'm like, okay, we'll try and tone it back a little bit, trying to add complexity into the texture, so you've got like something substancy there. But that idea of just kind of like, just kind of like putting it together that way. But I think I could do it a lot better if I did it. Like you get to the end of the model and you're like, if I modeled it again from scratch now, it would be a lot better than it is now. But
Well,
I did try and keep
even better can just mean more efficient. Like you could make it in half as many polygons, yet somehow looking twice as good.
Yeah.
That's a
it
thing.
does get like
100% a thing.
I've even got like a bit where I'm hiding some of the crimes with like I've got cut geometry in it. Like I pay too much attention to listening to people online saying never use a bull, never bull anything out. It's bad modeling. And I did it, and then I didn't use a bull, and then I'm trying to model this out, and I'm getting this janky geometry. And then I got to the point where it looked so bad, I literally just cut part of the ship out, welded in an older part of the model, and then remodeled everything into it, and then started using bulls. And the bulls work really well. I don't know why people were saying don't use a bull. They're fantastic.
But of course, if it looks good on screen, right? Like I can use a software that was stopped production in 2015 that was and still make nice looking shots. Like the first shot of my Prodigy web content, I got a lot of comments saying, you shouldn't just steal shots from Wrath of Khan.
That's a nice compliment.
So if it looks like a movie where each shot probably cost 100k to make, 50k, and I did it on my home PC in a software that's actually worse than a $1 million, but you know what I mean? Like to recreate that and be complimented is like that's actually a good thing to think I stole it, as you do.
So it's I think that is a really nice compliment.
So did you also model the Negvar then? Because you mentioned that earlier, and of course there was a clip in there.
No, so I didn't actually. Jetfrick7 actually really helped me out with that when I did a little test for it, and he did I think an STO rip, and so he ripped one out of STO for me and sent it over, and so I really appreciate that. So shout out to him. But so that I did a little weapons test. I think I sent that over to you in the package, and kind of like saw how that was going to go. The shields I thought might be divisive, but I just wanted to add a bit more volume and texture to it, because back in the 90s or 80s, you just had this kind of circle and a feathered mask, right? Like that's really what it was. And so I did a shockwave on.
Since I've also got the scene files.
I quite like the idea of having the shockwave go out and ripple. That was from Generations. I know it's technically of it penetrating the shields, but I was like, if we can see the impact and shape, I thought that might look nice.
And that's where artistry, you're actively doing against the tech to have something different that looks cool. Because that's not how shields work. You know it's not, and yet. Right?
Yeah, I wanted to try and make it look more modern, right? Like, if part of my thought process through this, well, I think people will agree or disagree, but was to kind of like think of the design aesthetic as being locked in, right? So I'm not changing the design, but I'm using the technology we have today. So if I were to say an art director came to me with like, this is what the look is, how would I approach that with modern day technology? And that was kind of my thought process behind it, whether right or wrong. That was just what I wanted to try.
Well, it's the exact same thing as a lightsaber example. You can't change Obi-Wan's blade design between episodes 3 and 3.5, but you can give him a real light blade.
Yeah.
And it'll entirely change look and feel, but you're not changing the art design, but it will change everything else around it and make it feel modern. And then it's like, stylistically, which do you prefer? Because the tech is improved, and at some point with the sabers, they're getting brighter and blah blah. But then you can't see the actor, sort of. You kind of create more problems, etc. Whereas it's funny, like I try and recreate the point of like downgrading some things, because again, if that's the look, that's the look.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, in my again with different perspectives, like that isn't a 1997 lightwave shield effect. That's a 2345 advanced shield generator causing a bubble. That's the best it could do, and there's no ifs or buts. That's what the shield generator effect was, because that's what it's doing. So to modify it now is to go against the spirit of what the thing is. It's not me. It's not them then. It's the tech of the time. It's like a phaser, right? Like people can play about Dustbuster because it's remote control. Go to hell. It's a phaser that they designed and created, like the TOS one. Why has it got a little emit? Like it looks daft, but it's tech. It's the tech of the 2245s, right? It's advanced for then. That's the universe, right? Yeah.
I suppose I come down in the question I misinterpreted from Donnie earlier on when we were talking about the sets. We were talking about the sets from Stranger Worlds and how they upgraded them. Yeah, and I think that you need to do a little bit always, because it's about creating shape and visual interest, but you want to update a little bit. It's just how far you go, and I think everybody's got a different tolerance into how far that they can change it and still say, I think that's okay. I think that still looks like it and stuff like that. But yeah, I do see where you're coming from. That idea of going.
I'm not trying to be a dick.
That's
again.
No, I get it. No, it's a different point of view. It's fine. It's completely fine. But it's what it is. There is a point of view to say that's what it looked like, so it should look exactly the same. And I think Star Trek Continues had a success with that, saying it's going to look like it was from the 60s.
But a little sleeker.
Yeah,
they were a little sleeker because
they were a little sleeker. I think also it's a lot harder to replicate all of the imperfections from back then, because the technology is just you just can't, right?
Yeah. But obviously, I'm
cameras are too sharp.
Slightly blessed that I have very good reference of 1990s 3D models and the software that uses the same lighting engine, so I can literally recreate almost one-for-one shots from Voyager, because it's basically the same. Like it would be impossible in, what do you say, studio? No, you said Cinema 4D. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm using Cinema.
Like the light looks different, and I can see when someone uses Max, because I can recognize the light engine. Like you could not replicate the same light style, because it literally is not the same style. Whereas I can, which is why I'm blessed, or I lock myself to the ecosystem, because like that's the look. Because that's...
So I used Octane for a bit. I had real problems with my computer crashing with the ship.
That would be an issue, yeah.
So Octane, for some reason, same computer, right, sometimes it would load the geometry in for 30 minutes and then it would crash, and it wouldn't even render one frame out. And then sometimes it would load the geometry in over 20 minutes and it would render all the way through and it would be no problem. And so I switched to Redshift for a lot of it. And it was just far more stable. It was like the geometry was loading in within 2 to 5 minutes. And it crashed once on me in the sense of Octane.
Yeah, I love Octane.
I was going to say, but Octane I think looks more beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I could do more tricks with Redshift because it's tied into Cinema. Cinema owns Redshift. So I could like do things with I could add little variants, and kind of gradients would map properly and stuff like that. And I wouldn't have to unwrap the UVs and do vertex maps on everything, which means that you just kind of don't do some stuff. But in terms of looking like the warp flyby test that I did, that's Octane. That was done in Octane. And I think it's got a little edge over the Redshift.
It sounds so pernickety, but I feel like I'm allowed to be pernickety given I've got a little bit of experience with things. Like I've done enough, I've put out at least 1,400, 1,200 space shots, Star Trek. So I think I've done my show reel could be probably like 12 hours of shots non-stop. I really wanted to find everything. And I think Octane has a really photoreal lens motion blur, which sounds really like, okay, why do you care? But everything is in motion, definitionally. And if it recreates the motion blur, in my opinion, really wonderfully, then everything has a feel that's hard to express, and I love using that. And also the bokeh in its inbuilt well, it's a plugin, but its inbuilt depth of field really looks very, very nice. So those two things combined, for interiors, you have nice out of focus and then motion. It just has a tangibility, and it's just limited by my ability to texture things, which could be better.
I mean, it's generally a thing you hear a lot of artists say. You put something in Octane, you do about 5 minutes of work, and it looks amazing. Every other render engine, you have to work really hard to make it look good, right? And it's just like Octane, I put one light up there, I crank up some bloom and do shallow depth of field, and I'm done. Press render, and I'm out.
Yeah, like, because Matt Borman gave me the basic one-on-one tutorial years ago, and I insisted he show me the most high render settings first. So the most annoying, most high-end light, because that bounce lights beautifully. And so if you start from the worst render but the nicest looking, then you expect the best and you just accept the render time. And yeah, the way light just feels is really nice in Octane. Just using the proper path tracing, it's like that looks good, feels logical.
Yeah, it really is. The problem I also have, like, I think it's like, if I were to build the ship, I'd build it differently again, is if I were to cheat any lights, it's very hard for me to get them out of the reflections, because it's actually one of the things that Octane can't do, is you can't just add a tag and say get rid of from reflection. And so then I've got a light that's reflecting in the surface, and I've got to cheat it out or something like that. Where in Redshift I can do that, and so I can do a couple of things I can't do in Octane, which I then did, you know.
Yeah, sometimes I'll turn off the spec in a fill light, just because there shouldn't be two suns, and the spec is generated by the harsh of light. So while it's not physically accurate having no spec, it's a fill. I just need a bit of light there. I'll turn off spec, and then there's no reflection by definition, because you can't reflect a diffuse.
Yeah. So it's kind of things like that. Also in my Octane renders, we were talking about gloss and not gloss, there's no physical barrier in the thing, because I was just getting fireflies and it was taking ages to resolve. So I just literally just took them out, and I just pretend that there's no reflections in the windows. But in the Redshift render, I actually put the gloss back in, and it could resolve within a time frame I found acceptable. And it did have a little bit of just bending of light. It just added a little bit of volume to it, and I was just like, oh, it actually feels quite nice. So in the shot where the ship comes over the planet, right? I actually noticed a difference even with the motion blur on when I turned it on and turned it off, and so I kept it on even for that shot.
Yeah, I've got some shots from my Rathacon film. I don't want to give too many spoilers though. Several people know about it, maybe in the chat, maybe not. And in the real environment from the film, of course, it was a big blue wall with a set in front of it. So that's the real, right? That's the real. But there would be a window with a reflection, and not having a reflection feels right, but also at the same time feels wrong. But because the reflection needs everything to reflect, definitionally, you have to have all of the scene geometry. And it's a big, dense scene, and already I'm getting like 5 minutes a frame for one part of it to get as I'm sure you know, the lower lights in CG, the more grain you get. And this is obviously definitely a low light scene. So I'm like, do I really want to invest, let's be honest, 100 hours of rendering into a 20% opacity reflection? Like for say 3 shots, I'm like, that's so much pathetic amount of work for that level. But to see the reflection of the scene in it would feel so nice. And then the lights of the ceiling, it's so nice. And I love doing that for some shots, for that stills, it's worth it. But it's like, oh man, it's just so much not worth it. But it's like, it's pretty.
I did something quite similar. So we've got the tricorder right here, right? And even in this, right, you can't really see the light on my face. Yeah, there we go. But one of the things is I actually delayed the shoot. So I could get
now
the
your film, and
tricorder.
look at now I'm grainy. Oh, I'm his film. Oh, it's drama.
Oh, look at that.
I can go one lower. Oh, drama. Wow, the camera's real struggling.
Oh yeah. So, but I really wanted that shot where you could see the light on the face, and so I actually delayed the shoot so we could get this, and was told I was ridiculous. But I just I knew that, like, you know, there's always a risk when you put something out and you don't know if something's going to be successful or it's not going to be successful. So I put a lot of work into the proof of concept because it might be the only thing that I do, right? You know, one of the reasons I'm kind of doing the crowdfunder is I feel that the proof of concept is really the limit of what I'm able to do, like that type of style of shoot and this. So, you know, kind of needed a bit of help to kind of take it further and do what I think could work really, really well. But one of the things I was like, if I'm only going to do this once, I'm going to take the tricorder, I'm going to get that shot, or I get the light on the face, because I've got this new fancy dual ISO that that I can try and play around with. But yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes it's just you do disproportionate things where you like this is like 12 hours of rendering, but it's for this one little detail, and I think this detail makes a difference. And sometimes it's something subtle as people just feeling something when they watch it. They don't notice it, right? But they're like, oh, that looks good, but I don't know why it looks good.
Now, I will say I've got a shot here from a shoot that I recently had, and $3, it'll be a mild spoiler, but it references what you just talked about in depth, and there's a story behind it. And I love modern smartphones for how good they can take photos. So $3, I'll give you a spoiler for my a film.
Sounds like a bargain.
I see. He knows, and he's in space. Trust the guy in space.
That's right, yeah.
Look, it's canon.
There's no money up here, but it sounds like a bargain, right?
I mean, you have Quatloos and you have Gold Press Platinum, but there is.
Oh, that's right. True.
It's 2 super chats if you would.
Yes. Okay. Mark Lawrence, right? It's the first one. Mark Lawrence for $5. Someone ask a question for men. For me. Right. Yeah. I saw the comment right underneath, Mark. Okay.
But no one did, so I'm going to read out Rhino, the assassin. He says, yes, I watch Star Trek fan films. I love them. My favourite is the Pacific 201 and Star Trek Continues, which are very different ends of the spectrum in terms of scale, budget, and time. Loved with practical effects of the shots of the stone creature. Yes, indeed. USD, just like animations, animatronic dinos. And also, I also do 3D models of my Star Trek ships and props. All the best greetings from Croatia. And Stuart's wife is from Croatia, so we have a tie there. Hello, welcome. 2 English people, crazy. And the second super chat, if you would.
Yes. Okay. From Geets, the person who's had 700 views of my film, but none of them recorded. So she gives £4, £4.99. Can we answer Roger's question on the size of the deflector, etc., from Ollie's whinging that it was on a mission with escape shots of working on a much smaller scale. Yeah, I've got. Okay, so what's the question from Raj?
One, is there a slipstream drive? And yeah,
Raj, no.
What is the exact dimensions of the ship and the deflector dish? Question mark.
So, it's like a hair bigger. I did a cube of the size of the Nova, so I was always modeling it within that cube. So it technically fits within that area space of a Nova class, right? So it is pretty small. And then I kind of modeled out decks, as in like just a plane that would be the size of each deck. And so as I was modeling it, I knew where a deck would end. So they should all be the same size. And it is modeled to the one-to-one scale, because you can do that in 3D and not be a problem. The size of the deflector diff is smaller, and so the design is actually different to the Sovereign, but the idea for this was that they were making the technology smaller for a Nova. So it's a cut down version of the deflector dish that you see on the E. And it's also like the nacelles. The nacelles are modeled like the E, but they're actually slightly wider. And the idea is, for one, is to keep the proportions of the ship so it aesthetically looks nice, and it's not the cells aren't the same size, but they also have to come down in size. Otherwise, it just looked like, you know, a puppy when it's got really big paws and really big ears, and it would just disproportionate. So the idea was aesthetics, you know, so it looks similar, but also in world, they're doing cut down versions of the technology because the ship's smaller, and so therefore it can't do as much as the other ones. So the deflector dish itself is actually designed to feel similar to the E, but at a much smaller scale. I hope that helps.
And once again, $3, and I will show a spoiler for a Trek short, and it's a rather cool shot actually. It refers to Oliver's lighting reference from previous Yeah, I do quite like this is like conversation we had a minute ago about the Galaxy and the
Mm,
Intrepid. You know, Rick's original briefing was it's the Galaxy but smaller.
hmm.
So everything that had, if you look, it's 1-to-1, just now smaller and a bit more
Smaller,
curved.
right?
And that's the amazingness of that logic, is that the fact that within what 5 years they could take the tech of a
Mm,
galaxy and shrink it down to 1/4 the size and be as capable, whichever means it's more capable per amount of ship.
yeah,
That's amazing. Therefore, the sovereign bigger is now the league above because the big ones
right,
get
yeah.
bigger. But the fact that you can miniaturize, which is why it's kind of
It's
funny.
that neural circuitry. It can do so
Yeah,
much more.
it has a couple of things. It has a lot of things
Yeah.
actually. Um, so yeah, having the idea of just like how do we take the tech of a sovereign smaller? It's obviously not a sovereign, but even if it's even 60% of a sovereign's ability set at 1/5 the size, that's the impressive thing,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Very much how we iterate smartphones. They're not changing much, but within a couple of generations, you can have this amazing thing now so much smaller because tech has evolved. They've learned the fact that you can get this
Hmm.
now in this shape is wow,
It
etc.
is, yeah. It's crazy. It's the idea that a smartphone, since the iPhone 3GS, right, has been more powerful than the ship they took to the moon. Right? Like it's
Yeah,
insane. Right.
yeah, and at some point,
I was good.
probably already they're gonna have this one phone is more powerful than all the render farms of Jurassic Park.
Mm, yeah. It kind of, yeah. I could do with that phone, by the way. Um, I was going to just address something Geet said something about the escape pods, because there was a bit of a contention while I was building the ship.
Oh,
Was
back to contentions. I'll
Oh yeah, I know
go season
contention.
one.
So there are so many escape pods, right, on the E, and it gives it that design look to it, right? But I think you've got more escape pods than there are actually crew members on the ship. If you can fit 9 people in an escape pod, right? Is that right?
So John's a lovely lad, but he doesn't follow the same logic strain as Andrew and Rick. And if you
Hmm.
look at the way he designed the ship, it's wonderfully designed, but why are there no big cut-in windows on the Voyager? Why is there
Hmm.
window over just everywhere? There's no bounce to it. It's just
Hmm.
aesthetically overall pleasing, but he's not thought about the small stuff, and he self-proclaims this. He'll give sketches to art department and says, and the CG guys can fill in the rest. Whereas Rick will
Hmm.
say, well, here's the transporter emitter, here's the like he'll do it
Yeah.
for you because guess what? That's why you're hiring him. And so whereas Rick Sternbach, he knows it's 12 people per escape pod. That's the standard, and so therefore you can math, and therefore he will, when he did them, he will design the escape pods to match the ship complement as per the script,
Right. Gotcha.
and therefore
So
it's logical. John just shoved them everywhere aesthetically because he's not going to think that way, and therefore he's just lots.
So because this is like a love letter to a couple of different ships, but mainly the Sovereign, I then put escape pods everywhere, right? And but they're also like they're not the same size as they would be on on the E, because otherwise that would look ridiculous and it just wouldn't work so well. So the idea is they're specially designed for the ship because it's so small that they do it so that it actually fits less people in there. But again, it's the crew complement of this. I kind of estimate it's kind of similar to Defiant. A Nova is 150.
Similar to Defiant.
Defiance
Goodness, wow.
was only 50 on the Defiant, right?
I
It's
mean,
quite
there's the operational crew and the crew.
yeah,
As
yeah,
in, like, if you go on a tactical mission to the Gamma Quadrant, you're gonna have more than the basic security 5 people,
sure,
because the crew is
yeah.
to you run the ship, not mission based. So Defiant's kind of a weird
I
one for that.
when I thought about it, I was thinking I probably wouldn't have many more than 50 on this ship. The amount
Wow.
of quarters, um,
Yeah.
you know, the amount of quarters, everybody, there. Also, the technology is more advanced that the ship can probably do more automated functions. You don't need that. You'd better off having more ships and those ships doing different scientific tasks, so you can do more things with them. But the idea is that, so when I thought about why would you have more escape pods on a ship, and then less kind of saying, what was the real reason, and more how do I justify it in my world, was the idea that maybe you can't access in an emergency another escape pod, so it's better having essentially more lifeboats in times of crisis, so then people can get off the ship,
Well, yeah.
right?
There's the it's like if you buy a PC or you assemble a PC and the graphics card needs 300 watts and the PC needs 300 watts, you don't buy 600 watt power because it can that amount, you want overhead because safety, or what if there's a surge, etc., or if you're overclocking, whatever. So yeah, having literally 12 1/12 to pick a 12 on a skateboard, great. But what if 7 get on one pod because they can't get to another pod, and now you've killed the crew?
Yeah.
So it's more about the health and safety of, you need a variety of pods across the ship because they need to be evenly spaced around the ship. It's not so much about the numbers literally, you want it throughout the ship and to have no area that's too far from a pod. That said, you can't design them everywhere because they all take up physical space. Like I was doing God, we 3 hours to do an MSD breakdown of a ship for a fan film person, and in this, as you can imagine, I was trying to be quite technical about it. We worked out the scale first, then the Windows scale based on that, and then MSD. I used Voyager because it's a good. Voyager is very small, so everything is a very understandable scale versus the E or D. It's very, very. You get it, right? You can put a personal window and get it. So I used their deck layout to do the deck layout. Cool, line up really well. I pulled pieces and rescaled, like as in it's more advanced, it'd be half the size, blah. And within about 3 hours, I worked out how much of the ship was physically taken up by stuff that wasn't, people space. And then I worked out where the windows were going to go in the escape pods, because it has to be filled with the stuff first. And on top of that, and when you start doing that, it's like, oh no. But then, and it was really fun to see version 1 of the model with the windows and the little details in place replaced based on that math. There was something tangibly, I mean, obviously I designed it, I'm going to think that, but like, because the windows weren't random, even though you could argue they were random, because I worked out, but that's where the end of the deflect has to be.
Sure, yeah.
They were sporadic, but with incredibly precise reason, which meant they had a personality that wasn't just same with the skateboards. Like, you can't put a skateboard near to the phasers, like, because there's not enough space. So again, limited in placement, and windows can't go there. Really fun exercise when you finish it. And then in the end, it's like, oh, this is actually, there's a bit of logic here. Versus a lot of fans, I'm not saying you, just saying a lot of fans, they just do the stuff on the ship. They start breaking down, but that's this. And like, oh. So I'd rather 101, because then everything, like, well, I can't put a window there because this is here. There's not even a question of can I? Well, I can't. Not should I. But because there's logic, your brain kind of fits it in.
I may have been a bit guilty of designing the ship and then putting all the stuff in afterwards. However, I think I have managed to wrestle it to a point where I think the only questionable thing is on the underside of the saucer section, you've got the inset, so you've got the walkway that goes around. And I had to kind of remake that in the sense of like, that's actually access points to the main computer. So actually what that bit on the underside is the only place I could actually fit the main computer. And
what a problem to have.
So it's so there's a walkway in the center, and the main computer is literally split into 2 hemispheres. But it's kind of like the way I imagined kind of going was kind of like it really is a camel designed. But have you heard the phrase "a camel is a horse designed by committee"?
A little bit, yeah, rings a bell.
Yeah. So it's not ugly in this instance, or it's not, that's dependent on if people like the way it looks. But the idea is that it was designed with aesthetics in mind. You know, the committee that wanted it, they wanted something pretty like the Sovereign. They wanted this thing. The designer commissions it, and by the time they've made all the compromises to it, and they've got to the end of the thing, there are flaws in the ship due to that design process. And so I always imagined it like the idea that in character in world, that people in the academy always want to be put on I called it a Sterling class vessel, right? Always wanted to be on a Sterling because it seemed accessible, but it was a really pretty ship. But everybody who serves on them never wants to serve on them again. They're just horrible ships to work on because they're cramped, they're inefficient. It never worked properly, which is the reason you never saw it again. So that was kind of always the idea of it.
And that is a tremendously charming way of doing it, because you've created a flawed design on purpose, which is far more interesting than a overpowered sexy beast where nothing makes sense. And you've understood some of the, I mean, I can see the corridor that you're referring to, like it's weird and dumb, but there's actually a real reason. Therefore, even though it's weird and dumb, and there's not insults, like just there must be a reason energy behind it, which therefore
Right, yeah,
gives it
sure.
a more grounded feel, because for it to be that way is therefore this, and
Mhm.
that's adds to it a character. Like when I did
Yeah.
Horizon with Rick Sternbach, he did most
Mhm.
of the work. You know, people ask me, what's the crew component? I'm like, haven't had to work it out. Where's this? Haven't had to work it out. But because I was able to like work with him, a lot of the stuff just kind of fell together, and
Mhm.
you know, he was able to. There are flaws in place that kind of make sense, but I like there's even more flaws in place vibe. There's a really fun backstory, just like, oh, it's not as glamorous, you know, because most ships are going to be pretty bog standard, you know. In fact,
Yeah.
I wrote a film, half read a film where I've never once heard the story, because why the hell would you, of a early TNG officer who serves on Excelsior, but one that is still an Excelsior, meaning they still have the giant bunk rooms.
Mhm.
Can you imagine sleeping in a giant bunk room as a 22-year-old officer who got out of the academy, who imagined going to the stars in a galaxy class, and he's sleeping in a goddamn dormitory with 8 people in metal bunks? Like, it, you know what I mean? It's a story by itself, like that basic premise of
Yeah.
a slightly not updated ship. But it's a wonderful flaw that creates texture, and I was really enjoying writing just the hell the guy feels being on a not good ship, not bad ship, but it's
Mhm.
not what he pictured, and that's okay. So I like that internal story.
Yeah, actually, one of the jokes I wrote for the film uh, was it's for the second part of the film, because the idea is that the captain actually doesn't mind the ship. He likes the cramped conditions. He likes the small things. The whole rest of the crew always call it a baby sovereign, which is not a complimentary term, right? It's designed as an insult for the ship. And so basically everybody's going around going, I can't believe I'm on this goddamn baby sovereign. And the captain's always walking by at the other point, and he goes, it's a Sterling class vessel. And I wanted to repeat it all the way through. And even to a point where the first officer goes, come on, guys, we're just on a baby sovereign. And the captain's walking by in the background. He goes, it's a Sterling class vessel. And the first officer's like, sorry, Captain, I didn't see that. And it gets to the point where you've got the admiral, he's in the brig, and he goes, I can't believe you sent a baby sovereign to pick me up. And he goes, it's a Sterling class vessel. He goes, well, I was on the commissioning committee. I asked for a baby sovereign. And that's how that joke goes full around it. So it was, the idea always had flaws, was always a part of the ship.
I'm
It
going
was,
to
it was, it was
challenge
always in
you
there.
right now. There's a
Okay.
real challenge. Because
Yep.
every time you said that, it couldn't get out of my head. Use one of those AI programs to create a new baby shark, but baby sovereign. Same melody. Because that is
I'll give
pitch
it a go.
perfect. And you could make that happen. I want that in my inbox in
Yeah.
a week. AI
I'll
made
give
baby
it a
sovereign.
go.
I want it.
Baby sovereign.
Do,
I'll
do,
see what
do,
it comes
do.
up with. See what it goes.
Because it
I think
sells
one of the things
itself.
that it well, one of the things that I couldn't do because of the fan film rules that I really wanted to put as a
Guidelines.
perk on the Indigo. Sorry, guidelines. Um, is I wanted to put little baby sovereigns in bottles and have starships in bottles as a perk, but that would class as merchandise, and I think they'd probably come after me for that one.
Yeah, it depends how
But
many you ask for, or you do.
yeah. But I just always thought, I always loved the idea. I always loved that Voyager episode. I can't remember Lieutenant so and so. It was when he dies, and he's been making Voyager in a little bottle.
Yeah.
I really like that. I thought that looked amazing.
It's always fun and really annoying to furnish CG rooms with CG props because it gives you such character.
Yeah.
Have you seen my 5 Prodigy episodes I've released so far?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So I invented the Khan Empire, and I had to design the crest for it, which was really, boy, that's steps I had to do for that goddamn thing. And I really wanted, Easter eggs are fun, and I built that. Nick built that as a set piece behind Nick in his office on Memory Alpha, as a full set piece. And I thought, ooh, Easter egg. So I giant set piece, shrunk it down to a combat size, and put it in Nick's ready room in the prime timeline.
Right. Okay.
But it's just out of focus enough to be a prop. And if you see it, you'll then know now that I've said it. But like, it's just a piece of whatever. So is that a real canon thing, or is that an Easter egg I did? Don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's set dressing, and it's a deliberate design, and it's a little thing. But there's a super
It-
chat with a thing, so you
Oh,
best
it's
read
just-
that so I can continue the.
Oh
this
yes, of
page.
course it is. It's from Geets.
Oh my god.
Seven Nathan. That's exactly how you say her name. Always go up to Geet and say Seven Nathan. She loves it.
Good to know.
For 119. It's Shivanandan. That's how you pronounce it. This is this $3. Lol. Go on, Sam. Show us the shots. So let's go. Let's see the shots.
So this is a shoot from 2 weekends ago, and it was the end of the day, and we're lucky, quote unquote, that sun and light continues. The problem with sun and light though is it stops at a certain point. Luckily, cameras are quite good, but a side effect of it getting a little bit too dark, and we just had to keep going because Americans were flying in, and we only had these hours, and I was having to keep change the ISO. I was progressively changing my settings as it was going on, but it was fine. The advantage was that, and this is a S25 24 Ultra's phone, the way we shot it, this links to what you said about the dual ISO and such, because the way we shot it, you can see the lights reflecting on her cheek from the second tricorder.
Right, yes.
So it's
there
actually
we go.
much darker than it looks, but the phone is up lighting it, but then allowed us to have the scene where they're actually fully lighting each other with fully interactive that in daylight you wouldn't get.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a really nice little sequence that is too dark, but if I can balance it, and fine. But you couldn't fake that in a bright room. So
No,
you're
you couldn't at all.
gaining the advantage of interactive, and it was really fun to see the actor do this and just interactive cause. And that is a strong. The TNG one's a very, very strong tricorder of light.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
and there's
Okay.
Nim and TNG. That was a spoiler. Nim's and
Yeah.
TNG.
No, it looks good. I like the fact. I mean, I wouldn't, from the shot you've just shown, I wouldn't know it was that dark. So it's you've really brought that exposure up.
Oh, no, that's just
but you've
the
also
phone.
got the shape
That's
coming
what I
in.
know about the
Yeah.
phone. There
Oh,
we go.
that's just the phone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
just
it looks really good.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yes, Raj. Yes. That's what he did to me as well. So, yes.
Yes, $3 Canadian apparently. That's what it is.
Give or take. Give or take. So I'll do one final official plug. Although, of course, we're unofficially plugging because plug. Yeah, definitely a worthwhile thing to support. We've really barely actually talked about it physically, as silly as that sounds. And that does sound somewhat silly. Also, we are now over time, but that's okay. Do you have any specific things about the Indiegogo itself that you would like to highlight and mention, perks or whatnot?
I mean, really, it's kind of I think the kind of best perks are actually the kind of lower tier perks, to be perfectly honest with you. It's, as I said, I think the Lieutenant, you get early access and you get invited to a live that we're going to do where it's going to be, we're going to show it and you can super chat in and you can ask me anything about the film, anything you want to say, and stuff like that, and be part, hopefully, of a nice little community event. We put it on. And and I'm going to keep it private, that link private, for about 3 months. So you get something out of it. The idea was that people did genuinely get something out of it, and then it will go on YouTube, and then hopefully more people will see it. But yeah, it's just, if you want to see stuff like this, one of the things I really wanted to try and do with this is kind of create a kind of modern aesthetic and bring back kind of dialogue to Trek. I think nowadays the modern fashion in filmmaking is to kind of do cinematic action pieces and everything's done with no dialogue, because there's that adage in film that to show and not tell, right? But I think some great parts in Trek are the dialogue, are the pieces where people talk and stuff, and those ideas come out and you feel the characters and you get to know them. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to put together, again, with the reactive lighting and the inaccurate CG. And
I didn't say that. Tish.
But it's basically, I kind of thought about it, why make a fan film and why do something like this? And it's to keep the things alive that we like about Trek. And I've tried to be as honest with the proof of concept as I possibly can and say, this is what I really like. If you want to see more stuff like that, and try and keep it alive within the fandom, so that, that maybe one day it comes back into official Trek and it goes back into canon, and people go, you know what, I did like that kind of stuff. I did like these types of stories and what they were, that we can bring flavors in from stuff like that. That's kind of what I hope people get out of it, and hope people want to support. So, and I can't do it without you. As much as I'd like to, if I could do it without you, I'd probably just shoot it and put it out online. So any support is welcome. And even if it is just like £10 is too much for me, I completely understand cost of living crisis and everything like that. Even if it is just sharing it and trying to get the word out.
You can put, you know, okay, maybe not. You can put £2 minimum. So you can just put in.
So you can. Oh, absolutely. So,
and it's also worth noting that Indiegogo a couple of years ago started a insistent tip.
Oh God, yes.
Because when I donated for a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver thing, I suddenly pledged like 78, and I was like, nope, that was a $45 perk, and I was like, so I had to cancel it, and then they forced me to give like a $21 tip. I'm like, no, because no. You're already getting the fees.
They were quite sneaky.
Yeah. So you have to deliberately say, you have to make that 0.
I don't want it. Yeah.
Because
they're already taking so much. If the campaign is successful, they're already taking so much.
They're banking on people not noticing, and therefore they're getting double tip.
Yeah.
And they're already like so rich, but whatever. So you can put very little. But as someone who's done many films, at the very least, very least, you know, it costs you, you know, a couple of pounds to buy the bread to make the sandwich for the cast. That seems silly, but it really does, you know. And you know, some shoots you have to get a takeaway because you've only got 45 minutes to film. If you spend 25 minutes making food for people, we just can't do it. Normally the only one shooting, so like getting £30 in helps that, or a taxi ride. It might seem silly, but when you do all these things, it adds up. And at the end of a long film, you're like, did I just spend £800 on the other category? I did. Can't pay rent now, so this is why, you know, things mount up. Beyond just the small amounts do mount up.
So they do, and also like I'm doing the fixed tier one, and I just so it's one of the things I probably should have put more front and center, but I'm doing a fixed tier one. So if we don't reach the goal, everybody's money gets refunded. So the reason I chose that is I hopefully gives an extra layer of security to people in confidence. Know we can make the film if we get to that certain. Adds a bit of risk in the sense of like, if we don't get there, then we can't make the film. But to me, that security was really important to people, that we were not being frivolous with people's money. I wasn't just going to like, oh, just give me all the money because I like money. Money's great. And it was more that I wanted to kind of like say, you don't know me. I don't really have a social media presence. So I wanted to try and be as responsible as I possibly could.
Because I was going to ask a specific question of, you know, if you only get 5, 6, 7K, how are you going to strip back the film to do that? I guess not.
We're not. No. So there's an element of risk by it, but you know, like, never say never with these things. You know, you don't know what your circumstances are going to be like. It's just probably there's a real risk of it not being made. But maybe in 10 years or 5 years, I win the lottery. I'll make it. I'll make the film. So, you know, I'll make both films.
Well, you know, a good example of that is Pacific Tour 1 that, you know, had a certain scale scope, and then the guidelines came in and they compressed it down to like 17 minutes, and you can feel it being amazingly rushed because he, rather than either doing the original concept or tweaking it, he just cut to make it fit, and it's now not what it could be. So, you know, there's certainly a creative integrity of saying, I can't make this for less. And if I tried, it would be therefore less.
Yeah.
You know,
I think when it comes to like fan projects, I think everybody does it for different reasons, right? You know, everybody wants to get something, because this isn't a career, right? You're not making any money out of this. There's no
always
real
a loss. That's the joy.
But so like for me, I really like shooting this particular way. Like when we did the green screen tests, I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't enjoy shooting that way. That's going to be different for different people. But I realized in that moment, I like being in a set or being in a location and putting the lens there and lighting it all up and not having those compromises of saying, I need to make sure the eye line's like this. I need to make sure the contrast ratio is like this. I need to do all of this stuff. I can just really brute force it a little bit more. And so because of that, I also like to shoot my dialogue in very specific ways. So I take a little bit more time with it, but that's what I'm getting out of this in terms of like, you know, why I would want to shoot the film. If people were funding this, what do you want to make the film? I do really want to make the film, and I like to make it like this, and that's what I, that I'm going to deliver at the end of it once if you donate. And so that's the idea, is to say, honestly, if for me to do this at 100%, for me to give you that 100%, if you've given me, any donation or support in any way, shape, or form, for me to give you that, I really need it to be this. Otherwise, I'll just let you down, and it won't be right.
Well, damn. There you go. What a final testament. So put in your.
We didn't really talk about the film that much or the campaign. We just geeked out over Star Trek, which is always a good thing. It's never a bad thing.
Well, we couldn't do spoilers.
Yeah, that's true.
I did show the proof of concept like 7 times, so.
Yes, no, that's true.
Yeah,
no, that's it. Hopefully, people like to
some tech on Trekyards.
Yeah. No.
Passionate fans should be supported, and shooting things well. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I said to you when we first got on this, the proof of concept speaks for itself, and therefore, what else is there in a nice way? Like, it's obviously shot really well, and therefore, what else? What else as a Trekkie, and knowing how you vibe. I would not necessarily give money to a fan who says, I'll do a TOS but in a TNG era. It's like, huh? Like, not understanding, versus I might give to like Continues, where it's about doing seasons 4 and 5, like the vibe and often be enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, also, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And part of the reason I wanted to do a live is exactly that. I wanted to prove I'm a real person and I like Star Trek. I'm not just some faceless person in the background, kind of doing. And one of the reasons I wanted to do the kind of like 2380s, 2390s type of era is it just, I loved it. I loved the way it looked. I know it's not the most cost-effective thing to do as a fan film, but
yes, I did tell you.
Thinking it's you did, yes, absolutely. But I just love that, and I just want to see more of it, and it kind of like that, gives me that kind of a passion to kind of say, what, I'd love to see more stories with this look and this aesthetic. The gray uniforms are my favorite uniforms by far, and just to kind of see that again, also with modern lenses and the ability to do the lighting the way we can do it now, just lift that production value. I think that's why I kind of wanted to put this together, because it's something that Paramount will never go back to. Right? Oh, looking very sharp there.
What uniforms? What? Sorry, what?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're on about.
I mean, yeah. Is that your custom? That's the one you had tailored, right?
No. This is the new test one.
Oh, well, it looks really good. Yeah, it looks really accurate.
IB Nemesis now.
Oh yes. But it's kind of something like Paramount will never go back to this look, because they'll always want something new. They want to sell new toys, new merchandise, new uniforms.
Yeah, because they sell merchandise. Well, yeah, they've done a great job.
I mean, I still think that they've got that thought process, and when they make it, you're going to want to see something with a new Starship, a new uniforms, a new look, a new aesthetic. And so I think it is left to kind of like fan films and stuff like that to kind of now look at this and kind of say, we can still see some new stuff with it and still make it look really good. And so hopefully if people like it, they'll take a second look and maybe help support in some way, even if it's just very small.
And you all want to see a baby sovereign.
Yeah, baby sovereigns. It's all the way baby sovereign. All right, that's the theme tune to the show. How did you know that?
In fact, that would be a good trailer. just that song and some new flybys. Yeah. All right. Any final note, guys, as we are closing out? Thanks so much, everyone, for joining in. The poll has got a tremendous amount of votes, so thank you all throughout the entire live. The question asked right at the start for 94 votes, which means 94 people have been here throughout the live, popped in and out. It's always fun. Do you watch Star Trek fan films? Yes, 52%. A few, but not many, 31%. And only 17, which is only about 14 people, say no. So that is a lot of people, which is therefore the community you want to reach. And of course, not that 94 of you are still here, but if you guys can help this campaign, like right now, I would love to see us get 800 by the time that people watch this. 5 tens, not a lot, adds up. Help if you can.
Yeah, no, yes, that would be great to see. And I think that's a really good ratio, actually. Only 17% of people saying no. So yeah, good on Trekyards Community, watching the fan
Woo!
films and supporting fans. So yeah,
Whoop.
fantastic.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for finally, finally, then jumping on and getting a face on camera. You've been around for a long
No,
time.
yeah,
And,
fantastic.
well, I mean, it's a recognizable name. It's a great name, right? It's like Samuel
Yes,
L.
it's not
Jackson.
something.
It's a combination name. It stands out, right?
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I remember like when I was younger and I thought maybe I wanted to do a bit of acting. My mum was an actress and I was worried about equity. What if I have to change my name? And my mum was like, "You're never gonna have to change your name. Don't worry about it." One of those. The Egyptian Irish combination is really a strong, unique separator, I think.
Yeah, very nice. History lesson aside. All right, thank you all.
Yeah.
Tune in this Saturday, of course, for a live from us, and Saturday, which you might even, as in the chat, my Drunkyards for my birthday.
Yes.
Huzzah!
Absolutely.
I've got a few presents that I've kept out. So that'll be fun to celebrate my birth. Woo! Before next week's Stranger Worlds craziness. So join for that live. Many boozers still exist. Many funs. I've still got that one secret uniform that I've not put on yet. That Hero did, and you'd love it, I think, especially. For that classic big super chat to get that on, and we love getting uniformed during the live. So if someone out there is like, "Oh, I wanna," it just feels good.
Yeah. Secret uniform. We're gonna have to see it on Saturday. Yeah.
No one's seen.
When's your actual birthday? Is it actually on Saturday or is it a different day?
7th of June, because we've other things, like we always skew things, and then we couldn't do weekends. So Stuart had his like 2.5 weeks late. It's fine, and then I've now pushed because of various reasons.
Right. Okay. Cool.
It's just the next one, but it's fine. My actual party is actually this coming Sunday, as in not this, but the sorry, the one after. So my Trekyards birthday is the 12th, I guess, logically, and my birthday party is the 19th, because that's where we get the entire Trek Shorts cast together, and everyone can attend, which is absolutely tremendous. Everyone's making it, including you. Nick from Scotland flying in for it, which is absolutely lovely.
Oh, fantastic! Sounds
yeah. Cool. So it's fine as long as it's not after that party. It's still a birthday. It's all still good.
I like the fact you've dedicated in the sense of we're going to do the Trekyards live, so I will have my actual birthday party the day after the Trekyards live. I think that's
no, the week after.
Oh, sorry, the week
Saturday
after.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, I misheard that.
That's fine.
I've done very well on this live, mishearing and misinterpreting stuff.
No, Mark, you haven't seen it. Although you also have a 1-of-1 uniform. you're a guinea pig. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your evening, and we will both. I'm sure you're going to bed. I'm just going to go back to work because I've done no work today yet because I've been doing meetings and chats all day, literally all day. Huzzah! Until then,
sorry, go. I was going to say thanks again, but
you're closing. No, you're closing. Go for it.
Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. I know because you had a really busy day today, so you really managed to fit me in. So that's great. Have a good pseudo birthday on Saturday. And if you want to check out more, the Indiegogo page, just search Prisoner 47 should be the first thing that pops up. So
pretty good name.
Without further ado.
Until then, he is not Captain Foley, who never showed up. We'll call you Ensign.
That's right.
Ensign
Farag.
There you go. And Kong. See you next time, guys. Bye.